inflation is the greatest lie ever told, right? It carries more weight because you wouldn't say that lightly.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Think of the amount of pain that has caused the world when the choices were you could live in a world of abundance where the free market turned scarcity into abundance for all society. And we chose an inflationary monetary system over and over and over again that has to end in tens of millions of deaths, untold suffering around the world. And I would say most people still believe that it's required.
You keep using the phrase 8 billion people in service of 8 billion people.
Yeah.
Rather than having individuals working at cross purposes to one another, the great promise of Bitcoin is that we can have true alignment between individual self-interest and global collective self-interest.
It puts the best of us into a network for the best for us. It imposes a discipline that forces the free market for the first time in human history that we'd have a global free market. That's a big deal.
If Bitcoin does not successfully transition from a strictly store of value / savings technology into a broadly used medium of exchange, that it was your opinion that it would fail.
It will fail.
Honestly, it's really good to see you again.
You too. It's been a while.
It has been a while. We were just saying offline, like the last time we were in the same room was, we had a real fireside chat in Jackson Hole, Wyoming for the Bitcoin Ski Summit, I think it was called.
Yeah, that was an awesome summit.
Yeah,
that was an awesome, and the snow that year was incredible. And the chat was awesome. It was great too.
Chat was great. Snow was great. Conditions were very gnarly though. We had a friend get injured actually on the mountain that weekend or week or whatever it was, because the skiing was just so intense.
It was intense. I loved it. It was intense though.
Yeah, I mean, we've always riffed super well. So like, I've been excited to talk to you for a while. I think we've been texting about this for a few months, and just like I was telling you offline, there's all these domains I want to get into with you they're Bitcoin adjacent, but I think they're a little bit more personal and spiritual. So like, I'm hoping and excited for this conversation to take those twists and turns today.
We'll take it wherever you want to go.
So to start, like with people that aren't familiar with you or your work, we both came on the Bitcoin scene around the same time, 2017. Mm-hmm. So we've been here 8-9 years now, which is crazy. It's been that long.
Yeah.
It's changed so much. I mean, in 2017, we were considered beyond the fringes. I mean, Bitcoin wasn't even on the fringes. It was like beyond the fringes. You know, people were laughing at us basically for embracing this thing. Embracing it as in even just to say it's a valuable asset to have in your portfolio was laughed at, much less to go to the levels that you and I go to with describing it as like one of the most important innovations in the history of the human race.
Right.
So could we, I guess as like an entry point to all of this, you wrote an amazing book called The Price of Tomorrow. And your core thesis of that book is that innovation and basically what? Innovation causes prices to decline over time. Mm-hmm. Yet we're in a debt-based fiat monetary system that requires prices increase over time to erode real debt burden. So these two paradigms are fundamentally incompatible.
Exactly.
Could you just, that's kind of a mouthful as I say that.
Yeah.
So as you approach someone with the elevator pitch on the thesis of your book, how do you communicate this to the layman?
Similar to how you just said, I try to get them to see that they are a participant in a global market. Mm-hmm. And as a participant in the global market, then everything they use, they choose more value. Mm-hmm. And every entrepreneur that's competing in a global market has to compete against their choices. Mm-hmm. And so, and they have to compete with what came before. So when you realize that, so you have a business, you have some business, you have entrepreneurs trying to create value, mm-hmm. attacking that business, because the only way to create value is do something different, better than the other business, or new, that changes two businesses into one, or 10 into one, like the iPhone and all of the different things. You're constantly you're under pressure to create more value. And we use the things that provide more value. It's a very hard thing to do working in the free market, because you're competing globally around other entrepreneurs that also similarly want to provide value to somebody else. And anybody who works in that environment, works for those entrepreneurs, is doing the same thing. And we're choosing what's more valuable. So how could that process not allow prices to fall? It would have to. Fundamentally, it would have to mean prices fall. And then what I saw as I was writing my book, because I'd been in technology for so long, I couldn't, in fact, I was talking about this process for 10 years before I wrote my book to anybody who would listen, because I couldn't understand why technology was becoming the base of everything. Every business was using it, becoming more and more automated. All technology is ideas in our head that we inscribe into silicon chips that then are creating more and more value, essentially faster and faster automation and more value. And we would use the things that created more value. So it would mean as technology accelerated, or not accelerated, as it moved exponentially, while most people were measuring it linearly, then you should expect prices to fall faster and faster and faster. And from that perspective, then every person on the planet would get wealthier, even if they didn't work, because the global people working, trying to create value, would create value as a byproduct for them too. And but once you understand that that's what the free market looks like, and that's where that free market is going with technology, and it's moving faster and faster, then you look backwards and you say, have we actually ever lived in a free market? And you realize the answer is no. We've always lived in all the isms are versions of a control system, designed to essentially steal that productivity that should flow to you and concentrate it in other people. And so when I give the high level, I try to get somebody to see that paradox in themselves, because it's almost hypocritical that you could believe, I want more value, but my house should go up, right?
Yes.
My stock should keep going up. My house should, and those systems, one's a debt-based system, cannot allow those prices to fall broadly. Right? They can allow certain prices to fall, but it can't broadly. It has to broadly make prices go up. And it has to do that, and then because all the money is loaned into existence, and if you allow prices to fall, that money is wiped out, and it can't be paid. The debt becomes more expensive. And so I used some examples in the book, and what you'd expect to see if I was right, and it seemed pretty obvious it was right. What you'd expect to see is a massive rise of debt in the preceding 20 years. As technology moved faster and faster and faster, you should see the exact opposite in the system you live in. And that's where in the book, it was $185 trillion in preceding 20 years, out of $250 trillion total dollars to provide $46 trillion of global GDP. So you could tell that more and more debt was producing less and less returns, which is really a different way of saying we're stealing more and more from every soul on the planet at an ever increasing rate that has to keep going. And then, so that's where I start, because getting somebody to see that both things are true.
Yes.
Prices go up relative to your currency, and you should say, why is that? Is that right?
Yeah.
And what should happen is prices should continue to fall if you live in a free market.
Yes. It's funny how intuitively it makes all the sense in the world, right? That and this quickly gets into a philosophy of value. So I want to ask you that, like, what is value? Because it all hinges on that word, right? It seems like we are competing to try and solve one another's problems better, faster, cheaper, right? So if I can solve a problem for you better, faster, or cheaper, then I've rendered value to you. Okay. Better, faster, cheaper solutions means, well, in general, the same solution should go down in price over time if I've been a successful entrepreneur.
Yep.
Now, someone could introduce something that's different, and maybe that's a different price, but then eventually other competitors will enter that market and will compete to deliver more quality at a lower price, right? This is the magic of markets, that people are competing to deliver more consumer satisfaction or value at lower and lower prices. And we all benefit from that game. But that game is somehow it breaks down with debt-based money. So what is value, and why does the game break down? Which you already kind of answered, but what is it about the debt-based monetary system that's destructive to value?
So value is whatever we determine it is, right? It's just those things that we would determine or value would create margin in a free market, right? Especially if you were first, right? You created more value, and then everybody would compete with you.
Yes.
Because it created a value, and the margin would fall and fall and fall. And
right.
you'd have to compete harder and harder and harder. And so out of this topic, in a free market, prices fall to the marginal cost of production. And
it's a big point right there.
Big point.
Yes.
Big point. Because marginal cost of production of your calculator app or other things on your iPhone is a line of code, and it's zero.
Yes.
So then what's the marginal cost of production of AI, lines of code creating other lines of code? Zero. And you could see that where things are going, if a business doesn't automate and remove all the labor with the AI, you won't use the business.
Right.
Because you are trying to get, so when you describe value, whatever it is for us that we value in that moment in time.
So it's preference.
It's preference.
Yeah.
It's a whole bunch of things. It's a construct of a whole bunch of things, but it's our decision of what sometimes we value a luxury good. Sometimes we value the cheapest good. Sometimes, so I don't think you can describe specifically who, what as a broad. Sometimes I want an experience, and I'll pay more for an experience in this moment. But it's what I decide is a value to me in that moment.
Right.
And that's and entrepreneurs all over the world, and the market is competing globally. All different ideas, all of our ideas that we could possibly imagine, is being put into solving those problems, giving us more abundance. If you really think of even silicon or what drives AI, these are grains of sand that we've turned out in our mind into things that power computers, that are in service for us. So the free market, what we really are through that process is we're abundance creating machines out of scarcity. That's what we are. We're abundance creating machines out of scarcity. And the scarcity provides the economic margin, right? To what it was entrepreneurs' new ideas and anything scarce, because there's more money there. Entrepreneurs attack and make it abundant. And so and then you will trade with anybody all over the world so that you can get more value, and you can't stop it. Like when you do price controls, when you do tariffs, the free market finds a way around, and like people are still buying Russian oil all over the world right now.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
You can't say because in their need, they need it and they want it, and they will buy it.
Yes.
So
people follow incentives, not laws.
And so, but the crazy thing is every single, I don't think I've ever met anybody who says, no, that's wrong. Right. And so they nod their head. Yeah, that's right. But then imagine the consequences to the next statement, that you actually, most people that nod their head also spend all of their time in this control system, thinking it's somebody else creating their problem.
So you're saying that there's this deep element of personal responsibility.
Well, so yes, but the cognitive dissonance of this, I think that's a spot that people get to in time. I can tell you my own journey and to get there, because I don't want to impose on anybody else that they should do. So, because when you say personal responsibility, which is true, it can lend to you should do this.
Right.
I'm not saying this. The world is constructed by all of our beliefs, and it's real to us.
Yes.
Right. And my reality is just as real to me as somebody living in a different reality, reinforcing them, and their beliefs will reinforce that reality. They won't see my reality. They'll believe in theirs. I'll believe in mine. And the world's constructed of those kind of opposing, chaotic, confusing. And so I really try to be careful not to impose what I believe.
Yes.
Instead, I try to say, here's fundamental truths. And then here's a decision path that in time, maybe you'll see.
So that makes sense. Like social reality, socioeconomic reality is constructed through this consensus of varying subjective viewpoints. Right. Money is a great example of this, right? People often call it a belief system, right? It's like whatever you call money and act as if it is money becomes money. So there's this heavily subjective aspect to it, but then there's also objective properties that make one asset better or worse money, right? Like there are objective reasons why, for instance, bananas aren't good money, right? They spoil quickly. They can be produced in abundance, so they're not scarce over time. So how do we reconcile these two things? Is truth somewhere between the subjective and the objective? And I agree with you. Like I don't like the word should either, because it's contra human freedom. Like you want people to arrive at their own conclusion. But then there does seem to be truth independent of all those beliefs as well. So how do we reconcile those two things?
Newtonian physics was true until Einstein physics, which was true until quantum.
So it's a resolution.
It's a resolution. Okay. It's an understanding of, and these layers would have different truths.
Yes.
Same thing in you, in a market. Sometimes somebody brings something into your insight that is a 0 to 1 moment in you, and you're never the same. In fact, that's actually how I see the world and any person that I'm interacting with, and actually not even interacting with. We can't help but collide into people. And when especially if we really care about somebody, we both come away changed, right? And sometimes that opens up insights that you never knew before,
right? That
completely change you.
Yeah.
If I even think about my own journey in Bitcoin in 2017, like you said, I was in Bitcoin, but not really. It was through the writing of my book. It was in 2018, 2019 that I went and discovered greater truths that were always there.
Yes.
Right. But I didn't see them.
Right.
So I was operating in a different world. Yeah. And as I discovered that, went deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's just, I would say the same thing in where I am today, trying to go deeper and deeper and deeper, and trying to resolve things, the incongruence, the hypocrisies that I've had. Right. The cognitive dissonance of going from one system that I thought was responsible for my safety and everything else, and I believed in, to another system. It's a challenge for people to go through, which is why I also understand why this is going to take time, and most people, they'll resist it. They'll take time. And if you just try to have a conversation with somebody where you're yelling at them and they're yelling at you, right? There's not a lot of thought exchange where people go deeper, right? And an introspective question where is the natural state of the free market deflation? Because once you actually have that in your mind, if that's true, and you nod your head that that's true, and I think most people nod their head, because it's actually it's a way bigger deal. They just you when you know a fundamental truth, you naturally resonate with it. And so then they're constantly fighting that and say, okay, well, why? And it allows them to discover it.
No, that's a great. Okay, so there's something here about beliefs and your identity, right? That your beliefs are the ingredients to your identity, or they're foundational to your identity. So when you ask these deeper questions, and when we say deep, it's like something that's more fundamental, more independent, more things in reality are dependent on it than vice versa, that it can challenge people's structure of their identity.
Sense of self.
Yeah, their sense of self actually gets called into question.
Their friends, the people they believe, all of their, and those are challenging times that either kind of force you to go to admit you were once wrong.
Yes. And therefore deconstruct your existing.
That.
Yeah.
And sometimes leaving your group because of in-group bias and all of what feels like love and belonging, which we've talked about before, we could go into. Sometimes leaving that group is it's easier just to put your head in the sand and not deal with that. It's just a really hard cognitive dissonance for people to go through.
Yes. The farm at Okefenokee is a revolutionary new regenerative agricultural community. It features an 8,000 tree olive orchard, which they use to make their own olive oil, as well as a very large pecan orchard. All the animals on the farm are heritage animals, with some varieties over 100 years old and others thousands of years old. Fresh eggs are produced daily by the farm's chickens. Also, there are over 1,000 beehives that pollinate the over 200 heirloom fruits and vegetables and provide honey to all the residents. The farm makes its own molasses, unrefined sugar, herbs, and spices. The farm also features an herbal apothecary and a commercial kitchen. These are just a few reasons why the farm is the healthiest place on earth. To learn more about the healthiest place on earth, go to okefarm.com and use discount code BREEDLOVE for $21,000 off custom cabin pricing. Again, to learn more about the farm at Okefenokee, go to okefarm.com and be sure to tell them I sent you. iCoin Technology has released a slick new hardware wallet. It looks like a mini iPhone with a high-res 3-inch touchscreen and camera on it. The device has no Wi-Fi, no cellular connection, and no GPS. It is an air-gapped hardware wallet which uses QR codes and a camera to communicate with the Bitcoin network. It has a built-in camera, which is required for air-gap operation, and it has an optional Bluetooth compatibility. It's really a brand new user interface and user experience for a Bitcoin hardware wallet. iCoin makes self-custody accessible, easy to use, and non-intimidating. It even comes with an optional custom iCoin thermal printer, so you can print out the private key and its associated QR code when you're setting up the wallet. This makes setup quick and simple. Also, it is easy to restore the wallet just by reading the seed phrase QR code with the wallet camera. And as we always talk about on this show, the only way you can truly own your Bitcoin is by having it in self-custody. So you need a device like the iCoin wallet to truly own your Bitcoin. So go to iCointechnology.com/breedlove today for 30% off the purchase of this sleek new hardware wallet. Again, that's iCointechnology.com/breedlove. Bitcoin was often called truth or a truth machine. Something about coming into conformance with Bitcoin, not necessarily just as a technology, but as an ethos, as a social institution, perhaps. Like it gets strange here because we are part of the Bitcoin network, right? As entrepreneurs or holders or whatever your role is, like you are actually part of Bitcoin, just as you are part of the internet, right? As a user, you have
even way different in Bitcoin.
Yeah,
like you are in the internet as well, but in Bitcoin, it is really you are both the map and the territory.
Okay, that's what I want to ask you. Like, so what is it? So this idea that when you come into contact with truth, you may realize that your belief architecture is incongruent, out of congruence, not congruent, incongruent, if that's how you say it,
incongruent
with that truth. Therefore, you need to deconstruct some of your belief structure and re-architect it in accordance with that truth. That could happen with anything, any revelation, any epiphany, spiritual awakening, all of these things. Why is Bitcoin catalyzing this type of transformation in people?
Well, so let's start it at a couple different levels of this, but let's start at the top level and just to ask a simple question. If you lived on a ledger that was manipulated and it had to be more manipulated over time and it was masquerading as a free market, wouldn't that same ledger accrue wealth and status to the people who were best at manipulating it? Probably, or didn't see it. And would there be any place to hide from if you knew that it was all based on that? Could you hide from yourself? Because it would lead to something in you that if you knew and you kept doing that, that you could easily you could say to yourself, you could tell yourself a story. I can't stop it. I'm just part of it, which most people will, but it'll lead to a mirror reflection of the world we see because we're both the map and the territory. And then ask yourself, what if a system was, you had an open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy that couldn't be cheated. Wouldn't that also be a mirror? Wouldn't that also create a mirror reflection? And so those mirror reflections would be very different.
Right.
Over time.
Right.
One, you would be telling yourself, I need to make enough money so I'm beating the other guy in a zero-sum game.
Yes.
One, you would actually be healing the world where it's not a zero-sum game anymore, where everyone wins, 8 billion people in service of 8 billion people. And so that would naturally over time, this could take a long time, but if people are listening to this and this is the first time they've heard Bitcoin, this is going to be a bridge too far, right? Or it might be a bridge too far. But if people have been in Bitcoin for a while, they will feel exactly what I'm describing.
Yeah.
Because they will see the change in themselves through the course of being on the Honest Network, and they'll see that's the same in most of their relationships, and they'll see it'll continue to expand. Right.
Okay. So if I'm going to try this like kind of active listening technique to say what you said to me, but in maybe another way, and see if I'm capturing it here. This idea of us playing a game where the rules are equally applied and unchangeable. Right now, and it's not exactly correct because you can change Bitcoin, but you can only change Bitcoin through consensus. So like it ends up being the pure expression of individual self-interest coming together, right? It's like a pure democracy, something like that. In this game where we'll start with that's like an ideal game, right? That we sit down to play a game, we play cards or we play basketball or whatever it is. Well, there's rules that are in play. And as the old saying goes, you can't change the rules in the middle of a card game, right? That's to corrupt the game, destroy the game. It doesn't make any sense at that point because things that were rewarded or punished in the past of the game are now differently rewarded or punished in the future. And there's no comparison in one game, right? Yep. It basically destroys the game.
Right.
So ideally, any game we play, we sit down with an agreement on rules that don't change at least for that round of play. Right now, like over long spans of time, maybe the rules of chess change at the edges here and there, but like broadly speaking, they're the same over time, and that's what makes chess comparable over time. So that's how a game works. It has strong agreement about the rules. In this other world you're describing, the manipulated ledger, I think as you called it, the primary way to win in that game is to gain control of the rule making or rule manipulating apparatus. Exactly. Right? So if I can somehow come into control of, if we're playing basketball, or we'll stick with chess, I can make my queen invincible or something, some rule that would just give me the power to win no matter how we played, how well you played, how poorly I played, I would still always win because my queen's invincible or whatever, or king was invincible, whatever the thing was. That game is no longer a game. People are going to basically fight tooth and nail to gain control over that rule-making apparatus. So it's no longer a game. It's now become like a violent conflict or a political conflict at least. So is that capturing what you're saying? Are we talking about like the game of money is?
Yeah, we're looking at this from and there's a whole bunch of different vectors here. But the first ththing we talked about, if the natural state of the free market is deflation, then what we should expect is on a game that can't be rigged, we should expect to, through that process, every human is in service to every other human on this planet.
Right, because there's no other way to score points.
Because now you've anchored to energy a system that can't be cheated.
Yes.
And so from that, but money has always been cheated. You would use the game has been cheated because that's how you would win the game, right? And that's why it's always looked like a control system.
Yeah.
And it's also why it's always fourth turning. All of these examples actually, I think, describe what I describe in a different fractal. It's always been deflationary.
Yeah.
It's just it slowly builds up and people don't notice it. So they're measuring inflation from zero where they should be measuring it from negative X, right? From the productivity rate. They should be getting richer every year.
Right.
And the only way to, and if you're in the British Empire, when the British Empire is exploiting other lands and stealing their resources, inside the British Empire, inside London, you look like you're winning the game. Still a zero-sum game. Somebody has to lose for you to win. So it turns into a control system. Then that breaks down because the free market's more competitive, and a bunch of those people who were being persecuted there move to the U.S. Right, and they move to the U.S. because their rights and individual rights are protected, and then that market is more productive.
Yes, because
of all the ideas.
Right,
and it becomes a superpower. Yes. And then that consolidates because of control of money. Yeah. And somebody can control money and essentially steal. The more people you have on your system, the more people you're stealing from. Yes. And you constantly go to war to reset these paradigms. Right. And Bitcoin changes that because it can't be cheated. So it puts I wrote this piece that was shared broadly, and I wrote it on Nostr, but it was shared on Twitter. That said, it's interesting to so if you do game theory and payoff matrices in game theory, and you game you can't get caught, you won't get caught, and we're just going to keep on increasing the value, right? And so million, 2 million, 10 million, 20 million, a billion.
I'm sorry. That's the payoff
game theory and then payoff matrices. Okay. So you add additional components to game theory. Okay. To be able to see what people will do. Okay. Beast games you watch, right? You see you see this naturally playing out in all society, and it always has because it's who we are. And so when you do this, what you see is I've seen studies as high as 20% of people won't cheat, and as low as 2.5%. Right. So, but let's use 2.5% for this. And what that really says is, what the studies are going through are their internal who they are, who they say they are, won't cheat for any price. But what is it? So 97.5% of people will, and always have. Yeah. And you could say it's 90 or 80, but it's a huge number of the population, huge number of your friends, my friends, huge number of people I love, that will, and they'll tell themselves, I needed to do it for my family, or I needed to do it before it was done to me, right? Or it was done, but that's the way the world works, and I just have to do. I have to do it. That's the way. So that's just, those are the numbers. Yeah. So what does that, looking back through our long arc of time, say about us? Is that it says that, and I think this is what it says actually about some of the most spiritual people or religious leaders and such. They were probably the 2.5% that were killed by the cheaters to wrestle this way. And then why we celebrated these this over and over again is it was reaching to our higher selves. And we celebrate our higher selves, that what we want to be in all of us that's not in all of us. So what is that? But we've, in the honest could never hide from the dishonest, because there's just too many. And when I say dishonest, it's a nuanced, it's just in game theory, you will cheat.
Yes. Right.
Right. So, but if there's 2.5% or 10% of a population at all times, or 20% of a population, those are the people that will run nodes in Bitcoin. Those are the people that protect this network, and they're unbuyable. Right? And lots of people will try to cheat it too. We have to expect that too, because that's just the numbers. But when you can now in Bitcoin have nodes behind Tor browsers distributed all over the world, and now the honest provide a floor, so most of society doesn't have to look like that. They can move to they can move to a paradigm that can't be cheated. So it's such a breakthrough, because we've never had something like that.
Yes.
And so it would make sense that if you had this money was perfect, no one would see you stealing a little bit, right? And you could accrue huge wealth through that stealing. It would be the perfect game theories with those matrices. And so, of course, because most of us will, societies always look like that.
It's fascinating. So is it fair to say collective human enterprise has been in pursuit of this game that other people cannot game to their own advantage? Like, we've been trying to discover a level playing field, not just in the sphere of money, but, the U.S. Constitution, for instance, right? It enumerates things that the government can never do, right? That these are God-given inalienable rights of the individual that supersede any earthly government. And then this is just a document saying this is what they are. There's nothing we can do to change these things.
Yeah,
but seems like an attempt at a level playing field as well.
It's an attempt, and it was a brilliant attempt.
Yeah.
But money is superordinate to law.
Yes, exactly.
And all of those attempts have always failed in time, because they get whittled away by the money.
Yes.
And so that's what's happening to the Constitution today. And that's what's happening it's getting whittled away. Right.
No, I want to reinforce your point there, because I think a strong argument could be made that all of the censorship we've seen in the post-pandemic era, right, and all the manipulation of mainstream media and science, for that matter, right, scientific research and consensus and all that, obviously state-sponsored. Half of, at least in the United States, half of the 2020 government revenue was money printing, right? Half was taxation, half was inflation, basically.
It's more than that, because it should come from the productivity rate that is negative deflation. It's way more than you think.
Even more than 50%. But it's doing exactly what you just said. You said money is superordinate to law. So the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, the freedom of speech, right? To be able to say whatever to whoever, anytime, no matter what, without being infringed upon. Yeah. That was directly attacked via censorship, manipulation of science, manipulation of media, et cetera, through this control of the money apparatus. Yeah. So exactly what you just described in the abstract, it's not that abstract.
It's not that abstract. We just went through it.
Like
again, try to actually, if you don't understand Bitcoin enough, try to explain to yourself, why do you live in a system where prices are manufactured to go up? And try to explain from that system how anything in life would get better and better. Where somebody can just press a button and now add to what I just said as that thought experiment that could, if you believed in climate change, how could you resolve climate change from a system that has to grow forever by pressing money and keeping us all on mouse wheels?
Right.
If you believe in one side or another side of a government, ask yourself, if they still do that, what's different? If you anything in your life, ask how could that problem be solved by more manipulation of money, and you go into this, and you add, especially if AI and artificial and technology is moving faster and faster to try to free you. Wouldn't this system move faster and faster to try to control you? Right. Wouldn't it be an entirely wouldn't it eventually look like the technocrat's dream, where there's a couple people in control of AI and you're just a pawn in the whole thing, deciding what you get? Or whether it's technocrats or globalists, wouldn't it look like that? Of course it would.
Yes.
Right. Pick a problem that you think can be solved from that. And you'll see every single problem is that.
Yeah.
And you're measuring all of the things that you're spending your time sucking you into the system, feeding on your soul.
Right.
Is this system trying to take your control?
Yes. Okay. Forget multivitamins and other supplements. Animal organs are the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. You can get 100 times more nutrients from organs than you can from muscle meats. But the problem with eating organs is that they are difficult to find in stores, they are difficult to prepare, and even when they are prepared well, they often don't taste great. Thankfully, Heart and Soil Supplements has made consuming organ meats so much easier by providing powderized organs in capsule form. Organ meats include everything your body needs to thrive: vitamins, minerals, peptides, proteins, and growth factors. This is why organ meats were the most prized foods for our ancestors. Fortunately for us, Heart and Soil makes these treasured foods easily accessible. So go to heartandsoil.co today and use discount code BREEDLOVE to get started on your journey to optimal health and vitality. Again, that's heartandsoil.co, discount code BREEDLOVE. Have you ever wanted to start a business in the Bitcoin space? If so, then the Wolf Startup Accelerator could be for you. Wolf is the first startup accelerator dedicated exclusively to businesses developing in the Bitcoin Lightning Network. 4 times each year, Wolf brings teams from around the world to New York City to work with like-minded entrepreneurs, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with Bitcoin and Lightning. The program is designed to help early-stage companies achieve product-market fit, develop their brand, secure early-stage funding, and grow businesses that fuel the global adoption of Bitcoin. Go to wolfnyc.com to learn more or apply today. Again, that's Wolf, WOLFNYC.com. The question, what is money, is all about exposing systems that don't serve us, and healthcare is one of the biggest. 65% of Americans suffer from chronic disease, and the answer isn't more pharmaceuticals. The answer is fixing the root cause. This is exactly why Revero exists. Co-founded by Dr. Sean Baker, Revero is an online clinic treating chronic illness through a personalized high-protein diet designed to restore gut health and improve metabolic function. A dedicated care team monitors your progress with regular lab work and daily biomarkers like blood sugar to proactively customize your care plan and nutrition. It's like having a smart clinic in your pocket. Right now, Revero is offering 10% off your first month. So head over to revero.com/breedlove. That's REVERO.com/breedlove and start taking sovereignty over your health today. I want to try, because obviously I largely, if not completely, agree with you on all of these points, but I want to try to introduce some devil's advocate perspective here.
Yeah, please.
Imagine I'm a normie American. I'm sitting here. I've got maybe I'm an upper class normie, right? Let's say I've got a high paying professional degree and job. I've got a nice house, but I've got a big mortgage on it. The price of my house goes up every year, but I've got a good credit score, so I can just borrow lots of money. And the real debt burden for me continues to go down because I'm borrowing stronger dollars and paying back weaker dollars over time. My income goes up because I'm good at my job and I get a raise that tracks inflation roughly. Like, how is that system rigged against me? It sounds pretty good to me on the surface. So you
go to your corner store and it's looted by a whole bunch of people that are stealing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You walk down the street and there's drugs and chaos everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You're scared to come out of your house because crime is increasing in your city at a crazy rate, and you believe you're insulated from that because quite honestly, you've stolen the money from them, and and so your life is not like, and I know lots of these people, and they're scared to death, and it's getting worse and worse, and they think there's a resolve inside those people, right? And those people are the bad ones, and they do the exact same thing as the other side. Those people are the bad ones, and it rips apart society, and it feeds on their fear. So yeah, their life is you can't build walls high enough. You cannot build up walls high enough onto a system like this. Let's actually, let's take this in a different way. I haven't said this on a podcast before, so it might be interesting for people. If prices fall to the marginal cost of production and AI is free, and gene editing will be free, and printing technology, printing drones will be free, and printing weapons will be free, and weapons that we can't even imagine.
And when you say free, you mean nearly free or absolutely free?
AI is free.
Close. Yeah. Okay.
It's like I run a whole bunch of models on my computer that are completely free. If the internet goes down, I still have the world's intelligence on my computer.
Got it. Okay.
Right? So, and some of these other things nearly free.
Yeah.
Right. So imagine creating a system of control so dystopian as prices are falling and falling and falling. Wouldn't you encourage all of the things you were most scared of by society? Wouldn't you encourage somebody that if they had no hope to release terrible things, wouldn't you actually make the thing you're scared of happen? Of course you would. And so, especially if there's billions of people missing out because you've stolen that from, and so they will rise up. They will use the same technology that you're using to control them to wipe you out.
Wow. Okay. So this then goes way deeper than just financial inequality, right? Or even financial repercussions. You're talking about money more as something like providing the integrity of social fabric.
Yeah, of course. It would have to, because again, if we trade with each other all over the world to gain more value, and the thing we do that with
stops working
is manipulated.
Yeah.
Then all of those trades would be manipulated to the result of who's manipulating the trade.
Right.
And so this, and when I think about Bitcoin, when I say it's an open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy, it's imposing this discipline on the world. It's imposing, if you measure in Bitcoin, prices do fall. And they continue to fall, and they will forever. In other words, what Bitcoin is describing is the first global free market that's ever existed. That's what it's describing. And it's
an ideal made real.
It's ideal made real. Yeah. It's something we could never do before, because our own personal incentives or the broad majority of society could cheat others in a zero-sum game.
So can we unpack that then?
Yeah.
Because all right. So broadly, if we each individually pursue our own self-interest and we respect the private person and property of others, then we get this ideal global free market where we're all competing to solve one another's problems better, faster, cheaper. The net result of that is prices in aggregate declining over time, standards of living rising in tandem. That's all well and good.
And faster, not just because of AI, because we've unlocked more global minds to contribute for us.
Right. More hands, more minds. Many hands make light work. Many minds make even lighter work. Yeah. Like we're collaborating optimally, I guess, would be the punchline for like an actual global free market. However, somehow that pursuit of individual self-interest did not lead us to that ideal world. We ended up in this central banking world.
Yeah, only because of the control of money.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to tease out here. Is like how did individual self-interest get perverted along the way and lead us? Prior to Bitcoin, it led us into this manipulated money world. How did that happen?
Well, if you knew you could control money, let's imagine you knew everything we're talking about right now, and most people didn't, right? And that would be,
which is the case.
It's the case right now.
Yeah.
And you could you have them believe that your currency should have inflation in it, that was better for them, that and then a lot of people would do that, right? And if you could, if it, and it's way like it going back through time, right? The maybe because there was no Bitcoin, maybe because there was no, we traded gold at centralized, we invaded others to steal their gold to be able to, then we repriced gold. Maybe it needed to go through all of these, us cheating each other to get to a spot where we didn't need to anymore. Right. That we finally found this. But if you like, you talk about us finding Bitcoin in 2017, think about in 1992 on the cryptographers mailing list, right? I think there were 70 people on that list, and those cypherpunks knew what we're saying now. Then
which is crazy. Yeah.
And so when I think of heroes and I think of people that were wrestling with these challenges, and then in all the failures in there too, created what is Bitcoin. So we just measure Bitcoin as like it was a success. All of it.
Right.
It wouldn't look like that without all the failures and tries and tests and everything else. And each time that was happening, more and more people grew aware of the problem.
Yes.
And then Bitcoin offered a way for people to contribute themselves into it, run a node themselves, build and now if you look at just from 1992 to now, if you think about the number of people who know now, and it's expanding and expanding and expanding, then what will that look like in 5 years as we become more knowledgeable on this? And so it's just going to continue to, but that's how and if you think, why would it look like this? 1992 especially, and then it went 2009 Bitcoin. At the same time that technology was speeding up and you would have this Orwellian dystopian control system, if you just went from free market principles, it's because the world needed it.
Yeah, right.
And this other system would be so scarce and so chaotic and so brutal that some people started to see it.
Right.
And people saw it before, right? Hayek saw it before. Nikola Tesla saw it before. Henry Ford saw it before. Bright lights throughout time had always seen it, but they couldn't put it together.
Right.
Until, and so why would it come together at that time? Same reason why fertilizer came together when we needed it most. because
necessity is the mother of invention.
Necessity and the critical need, and people are out on that edge, and they look like crazies. Yeah. Right. And they're out on that edge telling the world what it needs before the world needs to know. And then entrepreneurs go in and do that. It creates an incentive to create more. And that, we're so still early on Bitcoin, but it follows the same principle as abundance has always followed. Yeah. And it just, I believe this time can free us from the worst of us forever.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. So many things are coming at me right now. Like something you said earlier, where every technological miracle we have in this world today, it's always been here, right? All the silicon, all the elements, all this. It's just the human mind that's figured out a way to coordinate all of our actions across time and space in a way that allows us to bring imprint these ideas. I guess, first of all, discover the idea or formulate it, and then imprint it into reality as a material good. We're reshaping reality in the shape of our imagination. And that has obviously been the defining feature of us as humans and the progress of civilization itself, is that we keep creating better, more ingenious solutions to our problems. And we inherit, each generation inherits all of the prior successes, and we build upon them, hopefully. That's kind of the idea.
That's kind of the idea.
And, but to do that, we have to play these games. We have to play these economic games with one another, right? Where we have competing businesses, and like we're both going to try to solve this customer's wants, better, faster, cheaper. Maybe someone succeeds. A lot of people tend to fail, but the failures aren't useless, as you said. Yeah. They inform
the next step.
the entrepreneurs that will ultimately succeed as to what doesn't work.
They inform what we want.
Yes. So it's all this. It's very much a Schumpeterian creative destruction, but it's like capitalism and evolution share this, right? That it's. So nature's testing what works. It throws out an experiment, either in the form of an organism or a business in the case of capitalism. And like if it works, it stays and gets replicated. And if it doesn't, it gets discarded. I
try not even to talk about capitalism anymore because because we live in crony capitalism and probably always have. If we've never lived in a system, right? And so then when you say capitalism, a whole bunch of people have their perspective of what capitalism is. We have to face the fact if Bitcoin is the first global free market, which it is, and it can't be cheated, and if it doesn't get decentralized, and if it stays decentralized and secure, it's imposing. We don't have a word to describe what this looks like because we've never lived in that.
Right.
And so people's words, when you say capitalism, you have somebody on the other side saying no socialism, and you have some, and you'll mean something by it. And they'll mean something by theirs. And all of these words have to they've had to exist in the other frame of reference. It's always been a control system.
Right.
So even the person that's you're totally against when you say capitalism and you think you're saying a free market, it's never looked like that.
Right. Yeah, no, this is an excellent point. And this is Bitcoin itself is a new frame of reference. So it's very difficult to describe it in terms of prior frames of reference.
And what people want to do is they want to carry their old onto it.
Yes.
And you see this all the time as they're trying to resolve their cognitive dissonance, or they read these 20 books on this subject. Yes. This is what this needs to look like because my belief pattern is what this is. And this is new and different. Yes. It's very different.
And this is how we deal with novelty, right? That we have to take prior experience, prior frames of references and attempt to apply them to the novel phenomenon, because what else do we have, right? It's like every person we encounter, every book we read, we encounter that person in terms of all the other people we've ever met. We read the book in terms of all the other books we've ever read. Like it's a necessary part of gaining understanding, but it comes up short in a way.
This is why this is so hard to get.
Yeah.
Because really great changes. This is why quantum physics is hard to get from physics. This is why Einstein, it was hard to get from Newtonian physics. Yeah. This is why Galileo, when he looked out of the stars and he realized Copernicus was right and the church was wrong.
Right.
This is why society doesn't get these massive changes.
Yeah.
Because they so change the fabric of everything else they knew.
Yes.
You have to start from the first principles of the new fabric,
right?
To then say, what would that look like?
Yes.
What would that look like? Where that's a really hard thing for most people to do.
Yes.
So they're dragging their baggage into the new system.
Yes. No, it's an excellent way to put it. There's a certain flow rate at which very profound ideas can permeate collective consciousness, right? It just takes a while. We're caught up in that still with like E equals MC squared, in my opinion. Right? Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. So therefore all matter is actually energy, it's light. But we're still kind of flirting with this Newtonian worldview, right? We talk in terms of atoms and subatomic particles and things like that. It's like they're not billiard ball constructs, right? It's wave interactions. It's energy, basically.
Yeah. Well, so when you get into quantum physics, then
it's even stranger.
At the base of that, Einstein's what we measure, what we seems like reality, doesn't work against quantum.
Yeah, it's like probability waves and things. So you used the word fractal earlier, and I think that's such an important word. It's, this is the geometry of nature, that nature seems to be self-similar at different scales, but it never repeats exactly. The classic example is the pebble is the same as a stone, is the same as a mountain, just at different scales, right? They have the same, not the same, similar topology, geometry, but they're different. So it's self-similar, but different at different scales. And it sounds like you were describing how somehow, and I don't know, Bitcoin's a weird one, right? Is it bottom up? Is it top down? It's like, it's bottom up, obviously, it's emergent, but it is top down in that it applies this disciplinary force on us, right? That there's a 21 million hard cap, but that 21 million hard cap is a result of a bottom up process. So my question is like, are we, when we think nature works in terms of fractals, and Bitcoin's inspiring these personal transformations in individuals that study it closely, are we somehow in a fractal relationship with Bitcoin or money? Like what's going on there?
I come at it a different way, but I come at it a way that this, like if you're trying to get to, will Bitcoin raise the consciousness of humanity?
Yeah,
undoubtedly. Like and that would be one of those questions, right? That you would say that sounds for a lot of people who don't really know this. Oh, that's weird. Like you've lost me completely. Yeah. But if the natural state of the free market is deflation and prices should fall every year, and you lived in an honest system, and you didn't have to cheat because it was you had something imposing a discipline where every human got better and better, and they were everyone was in service of you. That would have to feel different.
Yeah,
for you, your family, it would have to feel different than the existing system. Yeah. So it's so obvious from the new system, and you can see a lot of people who get deeper and deeper in Bitcoin. They naturally get more spiritual. They start to question these things because they've had to go through they've had to go through the unlearning of what they knew before.
Yes. Okay. Would you rather have 1 Bitcoin today or 2 Bitcoin a few years from now? Bitcoin mining is a tried and true strategy for accumulating Bitcoin. Over a 2 to 4 year time frame, successful miners have consistently accumulated more Bitcoin than they otherwise would with a traditional dollar cost average strategy. Blockware mining as a service enables you to start mining Bitcoin from your laptop. Blockware handles everything from securing the miners to sourcing low-cost power to configuring the mining pool. They do it all. Plus, with Blockware's one-of-a-kind mining marketplace, you can buy and sell live Bitcoin miners with just a few keystrokes. In this marketplace, buyers get to purchase live machines at vetted facilities, enabling them to mine with zero lead time. And sellers get the opportunity to liquidate their machines and hosting contracts at will. This means you can mine Bitcoin with zero long-term commitment and high liquidity on your mining rigs. Blockware will even cover your energy bill for 1 week per mining rig when you sign up at mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. Again, that's 1 free week of Bitcoin mining at mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. And on top of this offer, you can also use code BREEDLOVE to get $100 off your first mining rig with Blockware Solutions. Bitcoin custody is evolving. Both self-custody and single third-party custody come with significant risk and trade-offs. OnRamp is pioneering a new standard, multi-institution custody, which eliminates single points of failure, adding fault tolerance and redundancy to your setup. OnRamp secures your Bitcoin in a segregated cold storage multi-key vault guarded by 3 independent institutional-grade custodians, none of which have unilateral control over your keys. Your funds are fully auditable on-chain, cannot be rehypothecated, and can only move or be withdrawn at your explicit direction. Multi-institution custody removes the technical, mental, and physical burdens of private key management, providing unparalleled peace of mind for you and your loved ones. Bitcoin is money, and as the price continues to appreciate, OnRamp helps you seamlessly tap into financial services like trading, inheritance, insurance, loans, IRAs, and more, all without compromising on security or accessibility. Schedule a consultation with the OnRamp team to learn more at onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. Again, that's onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. I read, this was Hoppe, I think he said that, and this blew my mind. We already know, well, anyone that's studied economics, even a little bit, will know that scarcity is the starting point of all economics, right? Yep. It's wherever demand for a thing exceeds supply of the thing, well, we need to resolve that tension through a bidding process or through, the alternative is conflict, basically. Yep. Either people are going to fight over the thing, or we can have contract and consensual trade and pricing to resolve that. So scarcity is the starting point of economics, but Hoppe went on to say further that actually it's also the starting point of all morality. That the reason we have morality is to establish these patterns between us that allow us to deal with the reality that there's less of the thing than what we would want, basically. So so as scarcity goes up, scarcity becomes extreme, right? If we take the extreme example of like cave men and women, right? We have no capital, we have no productivity, we have no machines. Let's say we even have proto-language. Very hard to create a collaborative environment, very hard to create social institutions in that world, very difficult to establish trusted interaction with strangers, let's say, right? It becomes very tribal, very small. You're dealing with a Dunbar number, right? You can only deal with 150 people at a time. And so if there's more than 150 people, then you've got warring tribes and tribalism and all that. Would it stand to reason? I guess it's kind of a two-part question. One, how does Bitcoin help alleviate economic scarcity, which you've alluded to already? And then two, if it does alleviate economic scarcity, is that the pathway by which it can elevate human morality?
I'm going to tackle this from a different spot, and I'm going to use something that I spoke about and I got emotional about in Madeira, because once you see this in yourself and you see it in everything else, it absolutely tackles the same thing. But so the printing press, before the printing press, we were in these control systems, more in these control systems than we would be today. What did the printing press do? It allowed you to reduce the cost of books and create abundance of books all around. But it allowed you to both read what other people thought and impact you, and then contribute new ideas. So it was an explosion of new ideas.
Yes.
And Michael Faraday, who I've used often, I used in that speech, Michael Faraday, who most people wouldn't even know of, went to work for a bookbinder. And why did he go to work for a bookbinder? Is because he wanted to, in 1700s, consume the greatest information around. And so he consumed information. And then he went on to be one of the top scientific minds of that time. Michael Faraday saw something that was all around all the time, electromagnetism. And he had this idea. Remember, electromagnetism would have always been there. Right? Going back to cavemen, would have been there. But because he was reading all of this and could think in a different way, he unlocked his mind, and then that unlocked something that was all around us all the time. James Clerk Maxwell, I think 20 years later, took his ideas that he couldn't prove and put perfect mathematical formulas that still run all of our satellites, lighting, electricity, most things we take for granted. Einstein, when Einstein was thinking about traveling on a beam of light, one of the things he couldn't grapple with was one of the things in Maxwell's equations and Faraday, which drove him to 2E equals mc squared and theory of relativity and the works. And I just used three names, right? But out of hundreds of thousands, millions of others who've contributed to our life in ways we can't even imagine. We take for granted all of these things. And most people would be able to mention Einstein, but they wouldn't be able to mention the other two and know that they had any difference. And so if the books never came that allowed somebody to be able to unlock their brain, to be able to see something that was all around us all the time, that came out of a brain, that then allowed us to unlock. That's how things progress, and we live on top of that. All ideas, all these things are just ideas in our mind that we create abundance from. And that took us probably, and I'm just guesstimating here, to 500 million minds exploiting 7.5 billion. And that's the way the world looks right now. And it might be 400 million minds exploiting 7.6 billion, might be 300 million. And at the very top of those minds, right, it might be 10 exploiting most, right? From that system. And all of those other people are not unlocking their minds because they're toiling in what would look like before is slavery.
Yeah.
Where they couldn't, in modern day slavery, toiling in this zero sum game. Bitcoin is going to add 8 billion mines in service to us.
Wow. And
all of these new ideas, all going to be in service of us, and it's going to move faster and faster and faster. And that's why I say you can't even describe because we don't have a framework. Right. I can feel it.
Yeah.
Like I can feel it. I can feel how we are all connected.
Yes.
And this allows us to be really connected.
Right. No, that's such a brilliant. So, I mean, if we just looked at it computationally, like I hear what you're saying, it is deeper than this. So I don't want to detract from that at all, but like to try and just make it a very dry computational argument. I forget the exact numbers, but every human's active consciousness has like, check my numbers, 50 bits per second, some throughput, right? But if they're not if they're just busy toiling away at whatever the existing, task, technique, the toil that you described, right? They're just doing whatever they need to do to make ends meet. They don't have the leisure or the freedom to necessarily sit back and experiment with nature and discover new things. So they're not even really online in terms of being potential innovators for the rest of the human race. But you're saying that if we, through Bitcoin, that it reduces the ability for those at the top to economically exploit those at the bottom. So then those at the bottom gain more freedom and liberation to come online as innovators that will then contribute to the accelerated future progress of the human race. Is that
Faraday was at the bottom?
Okay.
He wasn't at the top. That's the point.
Yeah.
When he could contribute, he rose to the top.
Gotcha.
And because the contributions were valuable, that is across the world. Now, when we think about it, naturally people listening to this podcast will look in their own backyard, right? They'll think about it. What does it look like in the US, which is a superpower that it has to exploit? But don't look at it in your backyard. Look at it in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Look at it where 70% of the resources for the cobalt we buy is coming from there. And they live in absolute squalor where they don't contribute this. They dig out with their hands out of these cobalt mines in punishing conditions and will do anything for any money. And the currency constantly erodes. I was just with Alvaro and Noemi from Demo Lab and Alvaro runs the Reynolds Foundation right now. So he did a talk where I think it was only 10 years ago, 53% of the world lived in democratic or semi-democratic countries. Now I think it's under 20%. Of course it looks like that because the dictators go in and take control because people will vote for anybody to try to, and then they seize control and they make it worse. So all of these countries that are getting worse and worse and worse, and it feels like it's getting a scarier world. It looks like that because the money's so broken, and then these people are forced into this zero sum game at the bottom, and they don't use their minds the same way that you might be able to.
So okay, that's a great point. Then let's grab that real world example you brought up with Congo and cobalt. Yeah. In a Bitcoinized world, how would you expect that to look different than what it looks like today? The wealth then would not be concentrating at the top so much. It would be more evenly distributed amongst the workers that were doing the work.
If we wanted more electric cars and we needed more cobalt, then Democratic Republic of Congo, their dollar would get stronger. Their wealth would get or their Bitcoin. We would be sending them Bitcoin.
Right.
And they would need something from us in return, right? And you would have this global trade framework.
Got it.
On a neutral reserve currency.
Got it. And then the balance of trade would be not just between the dictator of Congo would not be the sole, and his friends would not be the sole ones getting rich.
It would be like way different, right?
Yeah.
there can be no dictator with Bitcoin.
There we go. Okay.
It can't happen.
Right.
The dictator, essentially by allowing the free market to work, people, the money that should be taken, that should flow to you naturally is right now taken from you.
Right. Through money printing.
For the money printing. And it goes to dictators. It goes to those in control. It goes to, and you are part of that system that make it stronger and stronger, thinking it's somebody else. It's you.
Yeah.
And the more time you're in Bitcoin, the more you realize you can completely defund that. And you have somebody, if they knew, you have an open protocol that they can just move their time anywhere in the world. First global free market that ever existed, and their time can't be taken anymore.
It's beautiful. It is truly, hopefully not too far of a reach to say Bitcoin is anti-dictator technology.
It's not a reach at all. Like, just think, let's say a dictator puts in Bitcoin and the free market starts working and prices keep falling, and so their country will get richer, but their citizens will get richer, and then what funds the dictator?
Right. Money printing's gone at least.
So then a government has to get smaller, and smaller and smaller as the citizens of the country are actually in charge of what they want in the country.
Yes. It really does seem like, and I don't, at the risk of being the hammer that views all things as a nail, it does seem to all come down to purchasing power in my view, right? Like if the citizens can maintain their own purchasing power, that translates into political power, broadly distributed to the people.
It's bigger than that because they're measuring purchasing power not as neutral, and purchasing power should increase every year just by the constructive of the free market, and technology.
Yes,
right. So it is purchasing power. It is I get richer and richer and richer, and the free market have more ideas on that.
Yes,
more wealth.
Okay, so I want to go now to something you said before we hit record that I think is very interesting. I don't know that I've ever heard anyone have this particular perspective on Bitcoin. Because what we're discussing right now, this hypothetical Congo, Bitcoinized Congo, well, that presupposes that Bitcoin has succeeded, right? It's become a global, which is well on its way to doing, but it's not there yet, right? It's still what?
We're really early.
$2 trillion-ish market cap. Total addressable market for Bitcoin is probably north of 200 trillion, right? So we're 1/100th.
I see it different. That's actually one of the things that we'll get to in this. That's one of the rule changes. Most people are pricing Bitcoin from within the system. It's outside. It's the only thing that's outside the system. It's a protocol bounded by energy that is repricing the entire system.
Right.
And that's it's far more than 200 trillion.
Got it. And that's because it's increasing productivity. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's so again, you have this system, and let's just think about this giant pyramid, and all of the different asset classes. All the different asset classes would add up to about $900 trillion dollars. Real estate is 200 trillion. I'm talking global numbers. Underneath that is this debt burden, and this that when I wrote my book was 250 trillion. It was actually probably greater than that because I didn't include derivatives exposure and such. But if you include all the derivatives exposure, if you include unfunded liabilities, if you include Bank of International Settlements 2 years ago found an extra $65 trillion off balance sheet, that whole debt burden is over 600 trillion. So the 600 trillion is insolvent, and it's massively insolvent. But every value of all of the things on top of it are tethered to the insolvent debt. And so you'll print money, and those values will go up, right? From that. And if you don't have the stocks, if you don't have the houses, you don't have the, then your value of your money is getting destroyed, right? And that's why people use their house as a store of value, because they can't store their value in money, right? So all of these things are tethered to this debt that's already insolvent. So, and then Bitcoin is outside of that system. It is the only non-counterparty risk asset. Everything else has counterparty risk to the debt and all of the things and decisions that other people make. So if the Fed doesn't print really soon, you're going to see a capitulation. Things are going to collapse in that 900 trillion. Houses are going to fall. Stocks are going to fall. It's going to keep falling faster and faster and faster. Banks are going to fail. And you will vote for massive more printing. And then you'll say, and you'll say, how dare they? Right? You will do all of the actions inside this. You watch free market people, free market economists, pundits, and everything else. Why won't the Fed print? Like it's so ludicrous, right? This thing is the thing. And everything you do in your world, in your life, if you're not in Bitcoin and self-custody, it has counterparty risk to that.
Right.
Bitcoin, and the way I think about Bitcoin, and I know where we're going here, but why I say open, decentralized, secure protocol, bounded by energy, those 5 interconnected pieces matter a lot. Like, so protocols are winner take all, not winner take most. Technologies are winner take most.
Yeah.
Protocols are winner take all, and protocols come in layers.
Yeah.
The only recent example of a protocol is the internet.
Yeah.
And it had the same fight, right?
Yeah.
From early in the internet, then people wanting their own side net.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Intranets.
And intranets. And the open protocol wins. In the beginning of the open protocol, TCP/IP, it was something different, but emerged to be so I'm simplifying it a bit. But TCP/IP was the base level of the protocol, and it took 20 years to get to HTTP, which is Tim Berners-Lee and the World Wide Web. And it took another 20 years to have most of the things we take for granted on top of the internet, right? And those come in layers, and those layers, the first layer does one narrow thing, right? And then people try to attack it. They try to change it. And so think about all the attacks, all the changes, all the Ethereum, all the Solana, all the nonsense. Of course, that would look like it, because everybody's trying to, I have a better one, thinking in technologies instead of protocols. And then protocol layer 2, Lightning, Liquid, Arc, bunch of others, a transport layer that now turns the store of value into money. And it comes in layers. So that the protocols are winner take all. You have a choice to be on the internet or off the internet. North Korea, off the internet. Well, it looks for every other, and that's what's happening in Bitcoin. You're gonna have a choice to be on it or off it. So now, relative to the protocol bounded by energy, wouldn't that force the free market to work? It would force prices to work, because it wouldn't care if Jerome Powell wanted to print $10 trillion tomorrow or $100 trillion. It wouldn't care, right? It would be prices falling.
Right.
Now, if you were living in this world and you were measuring Bitcoin from this world, it would appear Bitcoin was going up. But that would just be your view, your fractal of Bitcoin. It wouldn't say anything about the protocol bounded by energy, right? It would just be your perception of what you thought was what was happening versus what was actually happening. And if you were pricing from Bitcoin, all prices would be falling forever.
Yeah. Right. Okay. That makes sense. There's a subtle nuance here, I think, where not all of the, let's say, the dollar denominated Bitcoin price appreciation, it's not all money printing and it's not all supply and demand. It's some mixture of the two, right? That there is,
the only reason
as money's getting printed more quickly, people naturally demand Bitcoin more and more too, right?
Yeah.
So the number go up is a little bit of both, basically.
Yeah. So, but again, or a better way to describe it, because I don't like describing that way, because it forces you into the other system to measure it, right?
You're trying to get people to, uninstall
to say,
dollars as their thought system.
Because what are they doing by not? They're actually contributing to the centralization,
right?
That's why I'm trying to get them done and install dollars.
Yeah.
Because what they're doing is they're taking this as an asset, because most people would see it as an asset within the system, like gold was.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it is so early that they would say, oh, wow, I can make a lot of money. And they would be converting their Bitcoin to a piece of paper to then measure the world. How many times do you convert money to another money to measure the world? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
If you just use Bitcoin to the protocol bounded by energy to measure the world, you'll see perfectly describe my thesis.
This is the frame thing again, right? Using it as a frame of reference will show you the crystal clear truth.
Crystal clear truth. And what you're describing is, let's just use one of the asset classes in this jerry-rigged bullshit world
fiat
of nonsense,
world.
fiat world. Let's use the asset class of real estate. And so in this asset class of real estate, I take on a whole bunch of debt, and that debt I can pay back later, cheaper dollars like you described before, and my house appears to go up.
Yes.
But when I want to sell my house to buy other goods, all the goods are way more expensive. Right.
Yeah.
And so, and then money races in, and hedge funds race into this because you can't store money in money. So the house creates a monetary premium, has a monetary premium that isn't the utility that a house would look like in a free market.
Right.
In a free market, a house would look like white picket fence. I raise my family, and it's a utility.
Durable consumer good that depreciates over time. Exactly. But in this case, it becomes a savings account or a pseudo savings account.
And in this case, it becomes, I am trying to find a place where my money won't get destroyed.
Yeah, right.
And so now all my neighborhoods don't look like family neighborhoods anymore, because only the wealthy can get it, and they own all these, and the renters, and the neighborhood starts degrading. And I wonder why it's looking like this. And I'm part of the thing that's making it look like this. And that would be true from that perspective. It would keep happening. It would get worse and worse. Look at other countries where the money printing's worse. So you'll see it. You'll see where it's going. And you look at those other countries and you go, those crazy people, like, I can't believe they didn't see it. And all you're talking about is a relative debasement that's coming, that is going to get way worse for you too. And so you don't see it. And then Bitcoin is on the other side of that ledger, the bounded protocol, bounded by energy, and it's repricing your house according to Bitcoin. So my house 5 years ago was 300 Bitcoin. My house right now is 22 Bitcoin. And my house in 5 years will probably be worth 1 Bitcoin or less. After that, it'll be worth half a Bitcoin. It'll be worth a tenth of a Bitcoin. And it'll keep falling forever to its utility. So it'll steal both. It'll come back to its utility value instead of a store value. Yeah. Right. It's taking that. And then all of the goods inside the house, all of the production, all of the, and eventually labor as we merge with robots, all of those goods will get forever and ever cheaper.
Right. Yeah. No, it's such a good point. And that this leads me to a very provocative phrase, which is that you could say, I'm pretty sure this is accurate. Over the past 10 years, housing prices are down 99%. And people are like, what are you talking about? No, they're not. They're up 300% or whatever the number is. It's like, well, it all depends on what your frame of reference or your denominator is. If you price it in Bitcoin, it is down 90. I'm pretty sure it's 99% over the past 10 years. That's the reframe, right? That's the software you need to uninstall and then reinstall the new money software basically to price the world. That's what gives you the clarity you're describing. Yeah. And from what you're saying though, so I spent so much time, as probably you did, where are the attack vectors on Bitcoin? Because if you had a protocol, it just, and you have to do the if statement first. If you had an open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy, then it would reprice the world for sure. Yeah. Not maybe. Yeah. It would for sure. Yes. It would describe the first global free market that we ever had. So now, then you have to attack it. And you have to say, okay, if we've never lived in that scenario, I can understand everybody's ideas on why they don't think we would, but I want to attack it and say, where is the risk? Where is the decentralization? Where will decentralization fail? Where will security fail? Where will, and because if those don't fail, if it stays decentralized and secure, and it's inevitable, Yeah.
then how do I add my time to help make sure it's inevitable? Right? How do I become a node in the network to drive its inevitability? And when you see what people are doing in Bitcoin and what's happening, that's what's happening. It is us.
Yeah.
And as you understand this more, you go deeper and deeper. And we should talk about a little bit why one of the very real risks is if it wasn't used as a currency, it will fail as a store of value.
That's the question I wanted to get to. That's where all this started. And this is what you said to me offline before we got started. That was very provocative and original. I'm going to try to reframe what you said here, but tell me where I'm wrong. That if Bitcoin did not, in your opinion, if Bitcoin does not successfully transition from a strictly store of value / savings technology into a broadly used medium of exchange, that it was your opinion that it would fail.
It will fail.
It will fail. Can you please, because I've never heard anyone actually say that. And it's always, I think for me, it's been considered that it is a natural progression. You know, there's this work by William Jevons that said gold was a collectible, then a store of value, then a medium of exchange, then a unit of account.
Work,
We thought Bitcoin, Bitcoin would follow the same path.
This is a network. This is different. This is different. It's, in some ways it's the same, but this is different because it's a network protocol. So let's just, and I want to be careful here. There are a lot of people that see it the exact same way I do. And those make up the majority of long-term Bitcoiners, I would say. Mm-hmm. And then there seems like a way bigger number of people who it's just a store of value. Mm-hmm. And those would make up why it would be a bigger number is because of 8 billion people coming into this and understanding this. It takes time to understand it.
Yes.
And they go and some go deeper and deeper and some don't care.
Yeah.
Right. And so now let's use this. So Jack Dorsey would say the same thing I just said, and many others too. And are actively working to create it as a medium of exchange. Mm-hmm. But let's go back to the first principles of the discussion we started with. You live in a world of control that's controlled by manipulating money, and that world has to be inflationary. Mm-hmm. So if you're pricing Bitcoin from that inflationary system, wouldn't you be centralizing faster, especially if technology is moving faster and faster? Because that system has to be inflationary. Mm-hmm. So your actions by pricing it are actually incenting the worst thing. Now you'll get rich in that fiat currency and you'll probably sell to somebody who's consolidating this, centralizing it more. Right? But your actions are actually centralized.
When you say pricing, do you mean strictly thinking in terms of that money, using it as your frame of reference? Or do you mean denominating your actions and trades in it?
So both. Okay. Because if you're pricing in it, you're probably not trading in it. You're probably not using it as currency.
Right. Okay.
Right? Sure. So then you'll take more risk and you'll say, you know what, the government's got my back. Mm-hmm. Right. I'm going to the ETF is regulated. Why would I hold this in self-custody? I'll just go to the ETF or any of the other things that are at the bottom of most of the trades, or it's Coinbase, right?
Right.
9 of the top 12 are custodying Coinbase, and you're centralizing Bitcoin more and more.
Okay.
Right. And all of these actions will seem totally normal to you.
Right.
Because and honestly, if I wanted to attack Bitcoin and I was a government, I would say I'm on side with it and collect as much as I could.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
From people who were selling in my piece of paper.
Yeah.
Right. And so
getting more and more Bitcoin concentrated into fewer hands that you can access or control. Yeah. Which in this case, centralized ETFs is Coinbase custody.
Centralized actors. Yeah. And if everything had to go through payments to that system of centralizing and more manipulation, then that system would have to attack Bitcoin because it's incongruent. The free market is incongruent with the inflationary system. Yeah. They're opposites. So you would be captured more and more and more. And then when the chain split came later on and all of your economic interest was in this centralized one, and they said these transactions can't happen, what would you do? Most of those people won't run nodes.
Right.
They certainly, they wouldn't be economic nodes.
Yeah.
And so if I was what I say, I've thought through this. You can imagine how much I've thought through this, because I always knew it was a risk, and it was the risk was the same. The risk is it's always been through human society. We choose that simplicity. We don't see ourselves.
Right.
We don't see it. We think it's somebody else, and it's actually us. Mm-hmm. And so if we want it to actually be, if the two systems are incongruent together, and you're spending in the one that's centralizing, then you're part of the centralization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It has to be a medium of exchange. Otherwise, the government's going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. You're going to get weaker and weaker and weaker, and eventually that would take it. Now, I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening. Now, not that it's not a risk, not that we shouldn't talk about it.
Yeah.
I don't see it happening, because once you know something new,
Yeah.
you can change.
Right.
Right? You can apply your actions differently. Yeah. I spend it in it every day. Yeah. I'm not on Twitter anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm on Nostr, because I'm putting my energy into the world that I want to see. It's the first reason I got into Bitcoin too, and I realized for myself that I was a hypocrite. Mm-hmm. I was a hypocrite because I was on all these boards in fiat land, and I had this hedge against Bitcoin with Bitcoin, and I was talking out of my ass, right? So
because you're living and operating in fiat world.
But I was on podcasts for a couple of years doing this, and that's actually why we started Ego Death Capital. Yeah. So I could move my time into the system and help contribute to companies that were building layer 2, layer 3, all of the stuff that would actually create a world where 8 billion people could be in the service of 8 billion people. Yeah. So, and moving my time, which I couldn't see before. Yeah. Right. That's why I know it's not, I don't, people can move whenever they want. Yeah. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Right. And so for me, I can't unsee it, and I can't unsee the risk. Yeah. As well, because the majority of people I know are treating it just as a store of value. Yeah. And just anybody who comes on here, your podcast from now on, ask them, how do you resolve that conflict from a store of value from a monetary system? Yeah, no, it's honestly, it's putting, you're giving some pressure for me to put on myself, actually, because I made an effort to get on Nostr, and then frankly, I don't know if I got on too early or whatever, but it was technically difficult, and I ran into some friction, and I just kind of gave up on it. And I know I need to reapply myself and give it another round. So you'll get this, and I'm not trying to push you here. I'm trying to see yourself in it. Yeah. Right. So I understand. So Lightning is an example on layer 2. If you went back 3 or 4 years ago, all those same things would have been said about Lightning. Sure. Payment failures 40% of the time. Yeah. Right. And so it was hard. The participation is what makes it move forward. So participation says, no, I'm going to create this other coin that's faster and better, and I'm going to do this other thing instead of it. And then the people build, and now that it's 96, 97%. They work all the time, and now it's lighting up. Same thing in Nostr. The amount of growth in that ecosystem is staggering. Yeah. And this participation, it's our actions within the world that we just say we want that creates the world we want. Exactly. So how could it be? Right. So, and I would ask everyone who says, like anybody who says it's only a store of value, try to seriously find a reason how that wouldn't be centralized from a system of inflation. Okay. One of my highest health priorities is keeping my brain in top shape. To take care of my brain power, I do many things, such as striving to read, write, exercise, and meditate daily. One of the latest tools in my brain power toolkit is MindLab Pro. MindLab Pro is a nootropic supplement that is scientifically proven to enhance your brain power. When I take MindLab Pro, my mind feels like it has a better grip on the world, my thinking is more lucid, and the articulation of my speech is radically improved. MindLab Pro has been tested in rigorous, double-blind, placebo-controlled human trials
and has been proven to enhance brain power for users in every age group. MindLab Pro is an advanced formulation of 11 nootropic ingredients and is backed by research from over 1,400 human trials conducted over the past 32 years. So if you're looking to enhance your brain power, MindLab Pro is an excellent solution. Go to mindlabpro.com/breedlove to start enhancing your brain power today. Again, that's mindlabpro.com/breedlove. Knowing when to buy Bitcoin can feel complicated, and knowing how much to buy can be overwhelming, and getting started can be a headache, but it doesn't have to be. That's exactly why I recommend Coinbits, because it solves these major blockers and it's the easiest way to buy Bitcoin. With Coinbits' Round Ups feature, you can automatically convert your spare change into Bitcoin while you shop. For example, when you buy a coffee for $3.50, the extra 50 cents is rounded up and it goes straight into Bitcoin. Here's why that's a huge win for you, because you don't have to be a tech wizard or try to time the market just right with Bitcoin. With Coinbits Roundups, you simply set it, shop, and stack sats. And you can set this up in under 2 minutes. Just visit the website, connect your card, and boom, you're buying a little Bitcoin every time you spend money. So stop wasting your time with complicated exchanges or confusing shitcoin apps. Coinbits simplifies your Bitcoin savings strategy. So go to coinbits.app/breedlove. Again, that's coinbits.app/breedlove. I want to ask a question. I don't know if this is pushback or not, but I'm just trying to clarify here. So I guess the first thing I would say is you're making a very strong case for Bitcoin education and philosophy, right? That you get to these core principles, like not your keys, not your cheese sort of thing, which is a big part of decentralization, would make any true Bitcoiner very averse to counterparty risk Bitcoin, whether that's an ETF or exchange or whatever the thing may be. So that's an important point. I think, first of all, that it's not just about what we're doing with the Bitcoin, but it's also about actually speaking about how to use Bitcoin and telling people that are new to it how to use it and whatnot. Now, my question would be, the clarifying question is, if everyone was just following that particular part of the Bitcoin ethos, not your keys, not your cheese, and people were largely in self-custody, but they still weren't using it as a medium of exchange, where's the failure point there? Like, if most people were just decentralized in self-custody, how does that prevent it from?
So today nodes on the consensus mechanism in nodes, and what protects Bitcoin is mostly that, right? Those, you have to go through a whole bunch of people who are not going to vote in their self-interest, and they're aware of all these attacks. They're vigilant, looking forward of all these attacks, having these conversations all the time. And you could expect, because 97% of people will cheat, and this would be a really great way to cheat, you could expect millions of attacks over and over and over again. You could expect attacks. You could expect people to not know that. So, but the nodes control that more and more so as more and more lightning happen, more and more payments happen. If you concentrated the economic nodes to a couple different economic nodes that were controlled through Tether or through, and everybody was using a stable coin, and those and the fees on those stable coins were being paid to the miners, then the economic nodes would vote for a chain split to say this, only the US derivative of Bitcoin is the one that's good. You would force a chain split at the time that would say, it still probably wouldn't kill Bitcoin, but it would say, then these people would have to vote to abandon the system. And it's interesting because most of the people inside the centralized system won't run nodes. They won't run, but the economic nodes, right, that are going through all the transactions, if they were centralized, then there would be pretty big power to. So you have to decentralize that now.
Got it.
It has to be paid in Lightning. It has to be. So Roy at Breeze, what he's doing, it's open source. You can plug it in. You can, and it distributes around. If everybody's using a derivative instrument of Bitcoin, why would that derivative instrument look any different than gold?
Right.
You'd suppress it. You change it. That's where, and so your actions matter. Your actions spending in Bitcoin, your actions spending in natively in Bitcoin matter a lot.
So that makes sense. I guess follow on clarifying question. I think Bitcoin has done somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 trillion in transaction volume settlement over its lifetime.
Yeah.
Around that, like, at the dollar price at the time of transaction. Is that the metric we should be looking at to determine whether it's transitioning to a medium of exchange, or is there something more subtle than that? It sounds like it should be maybe lightning volume, or what?
It's going to be a number of different things, but you want the nodes, the economic nodes and the transactions. You want to start spending in it. Just remember today, if you spent in it, you can replace it tomorrow. Right? If you and then as you spend and replace it, accept it if you're doing trades, right? And more as more and more people do this, it's going to emerge and it's going to be unstoppable. But it is still, there's so much confusion in this space. Most people can't see an attack vector coming, and they're just thinking, and they are thinking in fiat dollars, I just want to get rich. So the vast majority of people are still pricing Bitcoin in the existing system, where it's a state change to the existing system. And it's not, when I say this, it's not I'm negative on the US or dollar or US or not negative on that. This is a state change. This is 8 billion people in service of 8 billion people, and it changes the world so radically where no control structure owns you. That seems like a pretty higher purpose thing to be building, right? Then I'm going to get rich in fiat dollars.
For sure. For sure. It's funny. Okay. You use that term. This is bringing something up for me. You said a state change.
It's like a physics state change, water to ice.
Okay. Yeah. Like a phase change. When you said state change, what that triggered for me was a computer is a state change machine, right? That's basically what it does, is it can take on innumerable different states based on your inputs and all that. So, and this maybe gets a little more esoteric, spiritual perhaps, but one of the things that I've wrestled with about Bitcoin is this idea of bringing humanity into coherence in a way. Like you keep using the term the phrase 8 billion people in service of 8 billion people. Yeah. Right. So then rather than having individuals working at cross purposes to one another, the great promise of Bitcoin is that we can have true alignment between individual self-interest and global collective self-interest. And what's fascinating to me about that is really what an organism is. Like us as an individual organism, right? I have trillions of microorganisms that make up who I am. And obviously we can have pathologies and whatnot, but largely they cooperate to make you what you are, right? You have organ systems cooperating, you have a metabolism cooperating, all these things. And so as a macroorganism, you are this city of microorganisms. And it seems like Bitcoin, global digital non-state money, is the thing. If anything could do it, I don't know, maybe this is just a pipe dream, but if anything could bring humanity into coherence as one sort of macroorganism, or as close to that ideal as possible. Like I don't expect this to be, usher in absolute world peace and we'll never have any sin again or anything like that. But it does seem like Bitcoin could get us as close to that ideal as possible.
I agree. It's the and
sorry, just to tie that into the computer thing, is like if it is, I use the organism metaphor, but it could also be something more like we've talked a lot about the global free market, but like acting as one global computer, right? We're wiring all the mind computers together.
We are the supercomputer.
Yeah.
We're the supercomputer.
We become a supercomputer.
No, we are already the supercomputer. Yeah. When we added 500 million minds through the books, we increased compute.
Right. Yes.
That compute saw things we didn't see.
Yes.
That compute is suboptimal today because 7.5 billion people are outside of it in a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
We are the supercomputer. And there's no fear of AI at all, zero, if we're the supercomputer and all of the abundance from it flows to us. There's only fear from AI if you're forced into the centralized system where it controls you. So through Bitcoin, we already are the supercomputer. We're connected to everything and everyone. When I said two people can't come together and come away changed, you can see that. That means every person who's ever mattered in your life is still within you. Right? That means every book you read, the things that stood out, that changed you, because you think you're the same person all the time, but you changed constantly,
right?
And you change from we are all connected.
Yes,
we are the supercomputer.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So the degree and intensity of our connection changes what we are, both individually and collectively. Right, and so the ideal free market is that global supercomputer thing that we're describing, but we're bringing on more microchip circuit boards, whatever the metaphor for these 7.5 billion offline individuals are now coming online, and the supercomputer is becoming even more super.
Yeah. You just see all of these ideas compete. And so it's competitive. It's crazy competitive, but it's cooperative.
Yes.
In service of us.
Right.
We can't, in that system, we can't lose.
Yes.
So and people in Bitcoin already, I think, know this or deep in Bitcoin. You don't really have a competitor in Bitcoin. Every person that's buying more Bitcoin or adding their voice to it is making you stronger too, and your network and the network stronger. As you have network effects that and actually use the dollar as a network effect, or use Amazon as a network effect. The definition of a network effect is each node adds more value to all nodes. Meaning US dollar, Amazon has to fail. Google, they have to fail, because as they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're not providing the same value, they start extracting from some people to centralize their actions to another. Bitcoin potentially is the first time we've ever seen a network effect that could go on forever, because every node, every single node, every single contribution makes it better for every other person.
That's a great point. That it's because the network serves all network participants equally or symmetrically, right? There's never a point, like in the US dollar system, obviously there are participants that benefit at the expense of other participants.
Yeah, it's a zero-sum game.
Yeah,
somebody has to lose for you to win.
Yes, but in Bitcoin, that's not even a possibility.
You have a cooperative game.
Right. So therefore it generates more economic abundance.
So this network effect will beat this network effect.
Yes.
Because this network effect cannot, now this network effect isn't no longer a network effect. It has to use force.
Yes.
And coercion and control to retain it. And this doesn't. It's just an open network effect that you can add your voice to it and you make it stronger.
That's exactly right. There's, I think it was the Piaget, but he talked about open networks versus closed networks, that open networks always outcompete closed networks for that very reason, actually, that the closed network needed to expend resources securing its boundaries and enforcing compliance. Neither expenditure do you have in the open network, right? Because it's all opt-in, opt-out. And so there's no enforced compliance. It's voluntary, and there's no border to secure because it's open.
Right.
So therefore,
8 billion people.
It economically outcompetes, and it does it every time. All right. That's beautiful. And we're again, Bitcoin's this strange thing where we have to throw a lot of metaphors at it to try and get our heads around it. But it starts to flirt with like the religious domain in a way. And I want to tell you what I'm thinking here, but if we do bring humanity into coherence, this state of 8 billion people serving 8 billion people, there's a word often used in theology called atonement. The idea of reconciling oneself with the greater good or God or something like that, right? Atoning often for past errors or sins, confessing, wiping the slate clean, and then recommitting oneself to the greater, higher good or God. Atonement, at one meant. Is this global supercomputer, this coming together into one species, this coherence of the human race, Are we flirting with something religious here? Like so obviously it's very secular, it's scientific, it's computer science and economics and all these things, but you talk to Bitcoiners and you might be pretty quickly convinced that they are religious about this.
Yeah, and again, that's been used to be able to attack Bitcoiners too, because it feels like it feels so, but it would feel different.
Yeah,
if you're talking through this lens, and again, let's just keep it real. If it stays decentralized and secure, but if you're talking about that lens, that would be the new construct of the world. Mm-hmm. Of course, that would drive a strong following of people who wanted right in the world.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, it would attract people who left a system that was decaying and wanted to. Of course, that would feel religious. Of course, it would feel to. And no matter what you said about them, they wouldn't care because they're not going to go back.
Right.
Right. So it would feel. And then the further away, the deeper down the rabbit hole they were, to a whole bunch of people that totally misunderstood this, it would feel like they might be crazy.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I get that, but why it does connect to this or spirituality, it has to.
Yeah.
Where do we go with this?
Sorry, it's, your point is exactly well taken, that it is often used as a criticism against Bitcoin, right? Oh, it's cultish. Oh, these people are crazy. What was the mainstream media publication some time ago that called Bitcoiners are like psychopathic and all? And what do Bitcoiners do? They just absorb that. Like,
awesome. I'm a psychopath.
But at the same time, if you wanted to have a successful network, social revolution, humanitarian movement, whatever you want to call this thing, you would want some degree of religious-like conviction.
You'd have to. Every single thing starts from something that's outside of the norm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if it's right,
if
it's right, more people join the movement. And so all things start from outside the norm. There is no norm, right? We're all genius. We're all connected. We are actually all one. And through this, but it would look exactly like it looks like. It would also mean that the transition from one system to another system, which is really a transition in each of us, would be chaotic like crazy.
Yes.
It would have to be.
Right.
It would look like all of these things would be just natural. They just would, is
right.
The way it would have to look.
Because it is the polar opposite of the system that currently pervades.
And it's the polarity in us, right? Yeah. It's the change from one system that we say we don't want, and we blame others for that system. Well, we contribute to it.
Yeah.
We really believe that there's this other deep, dark force against us when it's actually us.
It's in us. Yeah.
And we could change us. Yeah. And we could change we could move our time.
I'm so glad you said the word right, actually, because in trying over the years, trying to figure out the right words to get my own head around Bitcoin and try to communicate it to other people, I found that to be one of the most important words, actually, right. There's this sense of the word right, just true and correct as a fact, right? Like when you get the right answer on the test. There's this other really important sense of the word right, like a moral, legal, or civil entitlement, like private property rights, human rights, things like this. And then there's this other aspect on the word right, which is like a moral dimension, right? To do the right thing, the righteous path, things like this. Bitcoin seems to be very fulfilling to all those things, right? We're already talking about Bitcoin as truth. Bitcoin's the strongest ever private property right. And then there's also this moral dimension where it does seem to be the right thing to do. Like if you think stealing and killing are bad, well, then Bitcoin is good.
Yeah.
So I want to hear you wrestle with that. Like what does it mean to say that Bitcoin is right when you invoke that term?
Yeah. And maybe I should have said it's right for me.
Okay.
Yeah. When I wrote my book, I could see that the world was at first into going through the book. I didn't realize that it looked like that. This I didn't actually. I actually thought I lived in more of a free market. I thought some of the similar things that other people would believe. I thought thought the same. I thought all of my work, because I failed lots of times, tried lots of times, learned, picked myself up, and I very much tried to put my to put somebody else in view and try to create value for them in any entrepreneurial journey. It's actually was I think probably most of the success was all out of really caring deeply about other people and trying to put myself and trying to provide value to them. But so the free market should do. Sometimes fail, sometimes didn't. But right. through that learning process, kind of got there. And then one of the really hard things for Bitcoin for me, my own cognitive dissonance, is I believed my own press.
Your own press.
So I'm successful. I've created all this wealth, and done this, and I didn't want to look that there might be a counterparty somewhere else in the world, like in Africa or Somalia or Democratic, that was the cost of my success.
You didn't. Okay, I didn't realize you were playing a win-lose game.
Yeah, I didn't want to believe it.
Yeah.
Even when it's confronting the hard facts. Yeah. And you could easily, I can go donate to those people over there and put them out of my.
Sure.
But I didn't want to go to the sand on that, and that was really really hard. But once you see that, you can't unsee that. And so when I say right for me, other people, I was once like 10 years ago, I didn't know. Right. It wasn't. I was trying. Right. And even when I knew, I didn't want to go all the way there. So I understand why each person. So when I say right for me, I wrote the book because I looked at my kids growing up in a world that was going to get more and more polarizing and more divisive and more, and everyone would believe they were right and righteous to do terrible things to other people or bury their heads in the sand as it got worse and worse and blame somebody else or thinking they didn't have a voice. That I wrote my book because I want to describe what would happen so I could understand. And then through this journey, I found more and more in me that I had to unlock to be able to move over to what was right for me.
So you initially, this is where it gets so confounding for me. Because you answer that question subjectively, right? Right for me.
Yeah.
So right in my personal perspective. But then you also speak as though, and this is again an area I have strong agreement with you, that we've built a civilization, a world. Civilization is maybe too strong of a word. We've built a global society based on lies.
The rules that we determined that would be best for global society, that were a zero-sum game, and we didn't see our role in it.
Right. Okay.
And we abstracted our role our accountability in that system, and we kept on telling ourselves that it was somebody else.
Okay. So that right there, that would imply, in my view, that there is some transcendent truth, right? It's not just right for me. There is some right answer out there that's independent of individual subjectivity, like maybe an intersubjective right or maybe an objective.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think why I push back a little bit is I know not everybody's there.
Right.
In my life, even going back to childhood, I've seen things that would sound crazy. Seen things that I should be able to see, like the connections that were, I'll tell you what one of them. 3 weeks before my brother passed away, he used to always, I made him walk to my office to what would drive over a bridge. It was pissing rain, and we got in a fight because he's begging me to pick him up at his office. And we got in the fight on the way home, and he said, like, what the hell? It's like, it's 30 seconds away and you're the one in drive. Why are you making me walk over, or in the rain? And because his was close to the other bridge. And I said, I feel like I'm going to die on this bridge. So I'd never go over that bridge. 3 weeks later, he died on that bridge. And so,
Well, I'm sorry, you said that to him?
I said, 3 weeks and 3 weeks. And so,
wow.
And different things like that in my life, I've been able to see connections.
Yeah.
Probably deeper, but blurry.
Yeah.
And so that, that then would come true or would be, and I could never explain it very well.
Yeah.
I didn't explain it. So something deeper.
Yeah.
Something deeper. And then and I've always been curious, like, what don't I know? What constantly. So I think this, what don't I know? Is that true? And I do it today. I do it today in Bitcoin all the time. I'm constantly looking deeper in myself, how I show up, how I showed up before, what I did wrong, how do I change that? How do you positively impact more people?
Thank you for sharing that. First of all, that's I didn't know. You never shared that story before, but okay. I would like to share something back, and because I want to help, I want to try to unpack this as I've gotten older in life. I don't know where to begin. Synchronicity, right? I don't know if that's a synchronicity, but it sounds like there's some kind of insight into a deeper reality that's not explainable by space and time, cause and effect, as we traditionally conceive of it. So my mother passed away March of last year. So this is March of 2024. And it was sort of a strange sequence of events leading up to that. She hadn't seen my daughter in about 2 years at that point. She had seen her frequently, at least 2 or 3 times a year up until that point. But when I started having this custody dispute over my daughter, I wasn't able to travel with my daughter. Her mother was restricting that travel. So I couldn't take her to go see my mom. And my mom didn't want to fly because she was old and she had some sickness and whatnot. Long story short, we finally get a court-ordered visit of my family, it's myself, my wife, my daughter, to visit my mom in Austin, Texas. We spend 5 wonderful days together. We have an amazing time. The last night, she'd always said, she'd been saying this as long as I could remember, but that she always just wanted all her kids and family under one roof, having dinner would be that's how she would like to go, basically. And sure enough, that's exactly what we did the last night together, right? We had the whole family together. We had dinner. It was all at my brother's house. It was amazing. And then we took her home that night. And literally 24 hours later, when we were departing, my brother calls me and he had found her. She'd passed away. And I discovered this right around bedtime. I was very obviously upset. I told my wife, but I didn't have the heart to tell my daughter. It was my last night with my daughter. I didn't want to I didn't want to tell her, right? She's 6 years old. I don't want to dump that on her. And so we went to bed, and we always, when she's with me, I always read the Bible to her on the Kindle. That's what we do, for her to fall asleep. And I didn't tell her what had happened, but first thing that was crazy is how intuitive and sensitive children are. That she was going way over the top, loving me up. It's oh, Dad, I love you so much. And just very, way more than usual. So she could sense, obviously, that I was hurting, and she was compensating for that. And then the second thing that was really strange was when we read the Bible, we just jump around. I'll jump into different books, whatever. And so anytime I open the Kindle, we're basically in a random place in the Bible, wherever we left off before. So I open it to read to her that night, and I hope I'm saying the right number here, but it's Proverbs 31, I'm pretty sure. And it's the mother of King Lemuel giving him advice. It's a very short book. And, most of the Bible is men right? Talking or whatever. But this is one of those books where it's actually a mother giving advice to a son. And the advice she's giving him is like, always watch out for the poor and the needy. You know, do not consume alcohol. That's for people that are suffering. Do not use it recreationally. You know, do not spend your time pursuing women. You know, find a good woman and marry her. And then the very next book after that was a good, like defining a good wife, basically what a good wife does. And they're two very short books, but I just took that to be, and there was also this like raging thunderstorm outside, which was just, it started right when all this happened. And so I don't know what, that whole experience for me was very profound. That of all the books in the Bible, I'm literally turned to the one that is the mother giving advice to the son. And then the very next book is, you know, the ideal wife. And this was also the first time my wife and my mother had met on this trip. So it's like, it was very meaningful. What is that? What is that? What is, are we, I mean, we're in a spiritual reality, would be my belief. And that sounds maybe woo-woo, but
yeah.
And I told this same thing to my therapist today, this morning. He goes, you know what? You know, obviously he's had a lot of these experiences too. He goes, I've reached the point where I'm no longer surprised, but I'm always amazed.
Yeah. That's a really great way to say it.
Yeah.
It's a really great way to say it.
Yeah. What is, I mean, here we are, like two pretty rational, I would like to believe, guys that are into Bitcoin and math and, you know, macroeconomics and all this stuff. But yet,
then you see things you can't explain.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe that's a hint of something else that you can't explain, and maybe following that. But if maybe through the lens of religion or spirituality, maybe it's the same thing. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's as you see things in in yourself, you start to see, and you reach a higher level of consciousness, and that higher level of consciousness would appear to other people as something very different, right? Because you would, in that in that higher degree of consciousness, you wouldn't. All of the things, they would just be, it just is, right? Yeah. You'd let people be who they are in that, but you might appear to those people as somebody that they could trust. Yeah. Somebody that made impact on them.
Right, right. Yeah. I said this to you earlier, and I tweeted it some time ago. It's a radical thing to say, and I don't have any empirical data to support it really, other than my own anecdotal experience and then the experiences I've seen in other Bitcoiners. As you said earlier, there does seem to be this pattern of personal transformation occurring in the lives of, you know, I'm going to use the term Bitcoiners broadly speaking, but it's people, it's not just like you buy Bitcoin and your life starts to change, but it's you start to really study the principles of Bitcoin, right? You get into radical truth and radical responsibility and self-sovereignty and proof of work, all these things. And maybe it's a fractal thing. You start to incorporate these things, or at least try to incorporate these things into your life more. And then you start to undergo positive transformation along some dimension. You know, it's not all the same, you know. Some people stop drinking, some people start working out, some people start going to church, some people start families, or some combination thereof. I tweeted and said, I think Bitcoin is the revolution in consciousness we've all been waiting for. Now, it's a bold statement, but then when I shared it with you earlier, you seemed to resonate with it. So what is this connection? What could the possible connection be between money and material incentives and digital technology and spiritual renaissance or revolution in consciousness be?
Yeah, I actually think it's really simple. It connects us, whereas the other one divides us. Zero-sum game versus a cooperative game. So the one has to connect us, and as it connects us, we would see that we don't have to cheat, lose to win. It connects us, and we can see that every other person is a part of us, is a part of the same fractal. So when I think about Bitcoin and I think about all of the different characters, when I say even in Bitcoin, every group through their in-group bias and out-group bias, every group wants to believe they wouldn't be in the group if they didn't think it was better.
Sure.
So think about what that does. Right. And think if you're listening to this, think about that, what it does for any of your groups, your friend group, your business group, you naturally, you wouldn't join that group unless you thought it was a better group. And a lot of times it comes across to others as better or worse. It's just different, right? It's just, and I'm no better in Bitcoin and I'm no better. We all have our unique individual genius. Threaded together, and a lot of times we're trying to compete with somebody else that we can't see theirs. We're trying to take it. So we're so desperate to have us seen that they see us, that we're pushing, and that comes from we've talked about it before, but love and belonging. We want to be loved so much, we want to belong so much that we're trying to be seen. Right, it's what social media exploits. It's what all of these things exploit in you and divide you. And so from that system, it will get worse and worse and worse as you're trying to get the thing that you're giving up that's really in you. So if you actually saw it opposite, if you saw each person that you met could teach you something, each person that you had a genius, you wouldn't be trying to take away the things where they're bad, where they're tethered liability. That Preston Pish always said, your genius is your tethered liability to the thing that you don't want everybody to see, right? And we're all equally, we're great at something and we're not so good at another thing. And so what if you only celebrated the things that were really great in people? Might it also celebrate back? Might that also create a mirror back to you? What if you weren't trying to take that, weren't trying to be seen? I think the more that you do that, the more that whole thing becomes an illusion and your life just gets easier and easier. But simply from Bitcoin, of course it does, because it connects us. And whereas the other system has to divide us.
Wow. So when you say connect, is this like, okay, love and belonging, which you've said this in the past, correct me if I'm wrong here, but like it is, the pursuit of love and belonging is the primary motivator of all human action, right?
That's what I believe.
Yeah.
And I believe, so I try to break down things in the how. Why does this happen? Why does it happen to everybody else? Then it must happen to me. And so I think just about everything we do is in service of love and belonging. Your child, you come into this world, you either you face abuse, hardship, something or other, and you have a trigger, or you don't, or but if you have a trigger that is somewhere in your childhood way back, that if I do this, I get this, right? If I become a victim, other people love me, and it keeps on repeating through your life, and you don't realize that love is all around you all the time. And by trying to get it by trying to be a victim, you're pushing it away with all your might, because everybody else can see it in you. They can see it perfectly on you. You're wearing a sign on your forehead.
I remember you saying that.
And as they move closer, then they move away because it's just too hard.
Yeah.
And you double down and create more drama to try to get them to come back. And we wear these various signs, and sometimes it's about money or control or this or that, all trying to matter to other people. Again, in social media, you can see it everywhere. Some people yell at the world, yell at the world, and they'll attract a tribe of people who love them for that, and trying to move up to a higher level where they don't have to yell at the world would feel like leaving everybody behind. So it's because you rely on the thing, and you don't see that you've created your own mirror of the world. It's real for you,
right?
So I'm not saying it's not real. It's just my life. But if I was walking down the street with, like, let's use a victim as an example, I was walking down the street, we would see two completely different realities, and both would be real. And what is that? And so that's kind of the why I think it happens and how easy it is to fall in this trap. And when I saw it in everyone, I saw it in everyone. I realized it's in me too. It has to be in me too. So how do I actively remove that in me? What are the things that I can't see that no one would tell me? And I had to get really honest with myself. I had to what would other people say, right? About what would my wife say about our relationship on a 1 to 10? If it wasn't a 10, it was me. Because what ends up happening in that, and what would my kids say? What would my friends say? Whatever, because I was trying to fix that in me. I was trying to remove the thing that I was doing, that was constructing the same thing that I could see in everyone else, and that's the. So there's both the why so the high level. I think it's in all of us naturally, not good, not bad.
Yeah,
it just is.
Yeah.
That we and why would it be? Because we're a species that thrives on group, and we rely on each other.
Yes.
So
Interdependence.
Interdependence. Yeah. And so so that would make perfect sense from an evolutionary standpoint.
Right.
That would be something that would rise up, and then we would get trapped by that. Our ego would get trapped by it, and it would create all sorts of perverse outcomes for our own life that we wouldn't see, that would manifest over and over and over again throughout our lives.
This is that I probably said this quote more than any of them at this point, but I just think there's so much packed into it from Carl Jung. He says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to direct your life, and you'll call it fate. Yeah. Which sounds like what you're describing, right? Yeah. That we have the unconscious, the metaphor you use, right? The sign that's on your forehead that everyone else can see, but you can't. Yep. Right? It's like it's the proverbial blind spot.
And what you typically do is that thing is so deep into your subconscious that you take credit for all the good things, and then as soon as that trigger, it has to be somebody else. You always
this is the
blame.
victim mentality.
So not just victim, but anywhere in your life that you have that. So if you wanted to address it, the areas that aren't great in your life, like any area that you isn't completely fulfilled, abundant, any area, it's me.
It's me. Right. So it's radical responsibility.
Yeah,
radical responsibility.
Because then at least you'll find it.
Yes.
Right. Then you'll say, because you'll want to, you'll naturally, it can't be me.
Yes.
You'll want to create somebody else. It can't be me. And so forcing that it's always you create everything through this construct. Right. Yeah. You create it. Your life is literally a mirror.
Yes.
Right. And even in that, even if something happened, like bad things happen to people, right? But you choose how you interpret them.
Yes.
You control your thoughts.
I was just going to say that this was rhyming for me, or that subtle shift. I picked this up from Robert Grant. He said, as you encounter adversity in your life, try mentally reframing it from why is this happening to me to why is this happening for me? Yeah. And that subtle shift is very powerful. Like there's a deeper thing here too, where like it is your aim organizes your perception in a way. Like you just described, if we're both walking down the street, we're going to have two different experiences of reality. Like there's the surface level understanding of that where it's like, oh yeah, well, sure. You have your eyes that are looking this way and I have my eyes that are looking this way, but there's a deeper level too, where it's like, all of your experiences, all of your expertise, all of your knowledge, which is different than all of mine. Say you're an electrician and I'm a mycologist or something, right? You're going to see all the power lines and the electrical grid, and you have all this knowledge about how it's interconnected. And maybe I'm looking over at the park forest and I can see the trees and the plants and how they're all interconnected naturally. Like there's what we are and the aim that we bring to our conscious awareness actually organizes what we see in the world.
And then what if you saw, like, so just say where the world's going today from this construct, what if you saw fear your family, for your family, for yourself, through, you thought it was this external person that was creating that. And you were constantly watching that news, that Fox or CNN or this Twitter or this Twitter. And you were constantly in this and constantly in this fear. And you were led to believe it was everybody else. It was those people. There would always be an external enemy that you could never deal with in yourself, because you've given away that power to somebody else. And if you just measured how much time you'd be spending there, I would imagine if just people added up the hours and the mental anguish that they're spending inside this prison cell that they're creating, it would shock them so crazy. And how much, and could life look different? Could you open your mind? Could you open it to something that could look drastically different? And then how would you do that through this? You would intentionally move more time. And as you moved more time into this opposite system that created this abundance in you, then that would manifest, and you would see other things, and you would start to, and I think that's the journey you're talking about.
Yes, I think so. And is this where attention goes, energy flows? So it's like, instead of what did Buckminster Fuller saying, instead of pouring your energy into destroying the old tyrannical system, just pour your energy into building the new liberating system, and that's more productive.
Yeah, it's the same thing I was saying with either Nostr for you, or because even you, right? Like, you're deep into this. You teach this wildly, and you could think, there's so much more I could do. There's so much more I can contribute into this. And with your contribution, you'll help a whole bunch of other people contribute. Because people, like, if you've made a mistake, that's why I say my hypocrisy and my own mistake, then admitting that hypocrisy and then saying, I made that mistake. I've done that. And then moving over here, then people can see it in themselves too.
Yes. Right. Okay. Yeah. You're, what are you doing? Encouraging people to become more radically honest with themselves and others, and by courageously embracing your own vulnerability.
And all of these, when I looked around and when I said going back to the signs on people's foreheads, the first step was, is it like, and just imagine through that, the empathy that would create. Yeah. But you didn't, you were curious about it, right? You could allow them. It is true for them. Their life is, and you don't need to change them. It's not your job to, like, you could tell them for yourself, but if they're happy there, then your job is not to fight that.
Sure.
Right. But imagine that, at least for me, this was what happened. And honestly, it probably even was worse. I probably thought it was better because I could see everybody else, but then I couldn't see it in me. And that was the insight. It wasn't that they were that I was better. Yeah. It was that I had the same thing in me in different areas.
Right.
And resolving that in me helped me create all sorts of opportunities, abundance, just seeing this. And so I share that openly because of course it would be in me. Yeah. Of course I'm no better.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Is this, so you unlocked, or you cast light on these blind spots of yourself through relationship, I would assume, right? Is that, like, you mentioned your wife, but like, because we can't see the sign that's on our forehead. So how do we get the mirror to see that? Is it in relationship with others?
It can be, like, if you go really deep with people who will tell you, will turn the sign around. You want a whole bunch of people like that in your life, and you want deep connections. For sure. That's part of it, but you can also do it on your own. Okay. You can do it on your own just by I used to I've probably asked this question tens of thousands of times, but it came from a book called Who and How to Hire the Best People. And the question went like this. You went through their job history. Let's say they had 5 different jobs. Yeah. Who did you report to? And they would say Bob Smith. Could you spell Bob Smith for me? They'd spell Bob Smith. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being incredible, 1 being terrible, what will Bob say when I talk to him about your performance? They would say the number, and then they would say exactly why the number. And then you just go to the next job, the next job, the next job, and you'd have a pattern. And what I found really remarkable about this pattern is the 8s, 9s, and 10s were mostly all 8s, 9s, and 10s. Sometimes you had a 1 and it was the other person, but it just repeated the pattern. And right after the 8, 9, or 10, they'd say, oh, Bob is the best. We created this, all the proud things that they created. And then you'd go to the next job and it looked the same. You go to the next job. And then the people that answered 3, 4, 5, 6 over and over and over again was the same thing out of them. Everything, they did this to me, they did this, I couldn't have success. And asking that question so many times to so many people, I just found it fascinating that the people that were answering they didn't know. They honestly didn't know it was them when you could see it perfectly because every job repeated in the same thing that was them. And so I instituted that, and this is back when I was running Build Direct. I did a thought experiment to, if I was interviewed by the board and the board asked me that question, even though it was my company. And here's what I did in the thought experiment. It's embarrassing to say it, but it's I changed the thought experiment. I changed what would Jeff's perception be, or what would Jeff's scale of 1 to 10? What would he? How would you rate him as a visionary? Not his performance. That subtle change, so I could get the 8s, 9s, 10s from the imaginary thought experiment that I was running in my head. And I went, oh my God, my ego won't let me ask the right question. And then I asked the honest question. I asked the same question I'd asked tens of thousands of times to other people. What will the performance? And it ended up being a 5 and a 6. Right when and then I went to the next board member, and it would have been the same. And right when I went there, the immediate reaction was, no, but that was this. That was this. And I could hear thousands of people that I had interviewed in me. And I went, wow. And so I instituted that as for a long time. I don't do it every day now, but I instituted it in my life. Every night at what will my wife say at a scale, if someone else was asking a scale of 1 to 10, what would my kids say a scale of 1 to 10? What would it, and to be able to find the things that I was suppressing and wouldn't let myself see. Wow.
That sounds extremely difficult though. Like even to,
you have to face it was super difficult. Like my ego wouldn't let me.
But I mean,
the question.
What do you? I'm trying to think. I mean, the natural word is humility that you have to have, but it's more than that. There's some kind of subtle sensory perception about yourself to notice that you reframed the question to rationalize or back into the answer that your ego wanted. I mean, how?
Yeah, it's and why I recognize this is so deep within other people.
Yeah.
Is it was deep within me too.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to unlock. It's so hard to let unlock because you don't want to face those things. You don't want to, it's so easy. There Truth has hurts. To be somebody else.
Yeah.
And what are you saying? That I don't control my life. Wow. I don't control my time. I don't control, because I have ultimate control of all of my time.
Right. Yes. That, oh my goodness, that is. So does that then lead to some kind of spiritual practice where you're having dialogue with these people? Like before you make a decision, I mean, obviously you can like talk to your wife in real time, but maybe before. I've heard this practice from other people where even people that aren't alive, right? They'll try to have like a internal conversation with one of the great authors that's influenced them a lot, and they'll ask them questions before they proceed down a particular path of action. Does it get to that level for you?
No, not at all. and not at all, because I don't feel like I need to. Like once because when you're operating, that you know it. And I'm not saying it was always a 10. Like when you would ask that question, sometimes it wasn't, but now most of the time it is. Like it always, and you realize, because you've resolved that thing, and you show up differently. And then you show up in your relationships differently, and you show up in the things that it was your action. It wasn't somebody else. It was your action that was creating the same mirror that you for others. And when you do that, just everything gets easier. Because
you're more in touch with truth.
It's just so it all becomes really easy.
Wow.
Just flow.
Is it okay? I'm trying to, because I'm not at your level for sure on this. Is it, let's say you feel a moment of frustration that before engaging in this practice, you would have attributed to an external source, someone or something, some event that didn't go your way. But now you can reframe that as, oh no, this is me projecting frustration onto this situation.
Exactly. It just is. The date is this. Your frustration is coming from your own ego trying to create meaning or whatever for you.
Wow. That is some Jedi level self-awareness. Can you say more? Like, what is this something? Because again, you seem like a very grounded, spiritually rich, present person. Is this something that just comes naturally to you? Is this something, obviously you've cultivated it to some extent, but tell me about how you've gotten to this point.
I think I just told you, it's through making mistakes myself and being curious. Like I am very, very, so I've always been curious about everything. And I'll chase things to the sand. Maybe that's most Bitcoiners.
Right. For sure.
Chase things to the sand. But I haven't been just curious about Bitcoin. It'll be anything, and I'll just get. And so what could be more curious about when you see impact of other people kind of repeating patterns and they don't see it? What could be more curious than it must mean you can't too? So that's where I started. And then,
so you presumed a blind spot.
I presumed a blind spot, and it wasn't like my life was bad. It was it was really good, but just each of these moments that I was able to unlock, create more richness in my life, deeper connections, more. And of course they create deeper connections because you see the thing in you. Right. And you
commonality with everyone else.
Commonality with everyone else. They don't have to change, but you understand, you understand because you've also, it's been the same for you. So now you can be very, very present.
Okay. I think that's a good answer, but I'm not going to let you off that easy because so many Bitcoiners are hyper curious, like myself included. I'm a hyper curious person. That's why I think I do what I do. But you've combined your curiosity with something else that I'm not quite sure. Again, the natural word is humility, but I don't think that's exactly correct. I mean, your firm is ego, death, capital. So is it somehow combining your curiosity with an ego minimization so that you're able to introspect really well? Like what's the combination here? What's the other half of this? It can't be just curiosity, because I know a lot of curious people that are very egotistical.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it is actually trying to see that kind of that ego in me was my worst enemy, right? Same thing. You think it's serving you. It's not. Ego, death, capital didn't come from me. It was my partners that came up with the idea. It seemed to fit where we're going in Bitcoin. And into the higher consciousness and what I suspect will happen, and how I want to act in this but no, it didn't even come from me. So
wow, that's surprising. Actually, I've really. Wow, surprising. Okay, spiritual practices, psychedelics. Are there any things?
I've never done psychedelics. I'm really? I'm not against them at all. And when people describe what they get in psychedelics, it feels like the exact same thing I get in meditation.
Got it. So you do a lot of meditation.
I do a lot of meditation, and deep meditation, and that to a point that everything is one.
Yes.
And then I'm able to hold that space more and more and more
in real life.
In real life.
Yes. Okay. That makes a lot of sense to me. I've done both psychedelics and a lot of meditation, and you can have similar experiences. I don't think psychedelics are necessary for that. Wow. So cool. So meditation, how do I want to leave this? Young Jeff Booth is sitting here. I don't know what he's like. I've only known you the past couple of years. What was your journey from young you that I presume was less self-aware, less in tune, less able to even introspect into awareness of your own blind spots? That's an assumption. I don't know if you've just always been this way, but you said you've had a meditation practice and you've gone through things in life that have taught you this about yourself and other people. How would you, because there's millions and millions of young men out there right now that are young and trying to figure this out. Like, how would you guide young Jeff Booth or those individuals to become more like you, where you are today?
I wouldn't say to become more like me. I would say your own path is your path. And so I came from a family with massive amounts of love in it, right? Like really close. So I was born in Regina, Saskatchewan, but then moved to Vancouver. So we lived in we lived in a nice area of the world. We benefit from all these things. So if you just think of the global population and where I lived, the family I was born into, like you won the lottery, right? So I had a head start in safety. What family looks like, and everything. And then I wanted to make a lot of money. I wanted to go. I was always curious. I was I hated school, but I excelled. Like I was in an enriched rich school. Then I dropped out of university to go into business early. First real estate, then I bought a real estate practice. Then I built a building company, and they all came out of this. My first real estate job, instead of joining a 100% or a 60% where they take 40% of the commission, you keep 60. I joined 100%, rented a desk each month. And so you want radical accountability. Like I was all in, but I'm fresh out of school. It looks like I'm wearing my dad's suit. Nobody my age is going to buy a house. I show up to work the first day. There's just this big desk, a telephone, not cell phone, old telephone, and a phone book. You have no idea what to do. And you pick up the phone book and you start with A's. And you don't know if they own a house or want to buy a house. And you just start. So the amount of mistakes and the amount of learning that I've constantly done. And then you hone your craft, you get better and better and better. And but I've never been also afraid to dive all the way in. So I would rather learn by doing. And dive all the way in, and then just from this part of it, maybe part of this was always there. I think part of this was always there. Introspective. How do I show up in the world? What are the things but insights along the way. Beautiful people in my life, along the way that just kind of created the journey.
It's amazing. So, all right. Don't be afraid to dive in, take action, follow. You said each person follow their own path. When you say follow, that's very broad, right? So what were we talked about synchronicities earlier, but what are the signposts you followed along that path to know you're on the path?
So maybe, I think I've always been able to better see the future than others.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. It was a common Bitcoiner thing too, right?
Yeah. But and maybe that's why you are move into an entrepreneurial thing, because you see a structure of the world, and I'm not, and when I say and I'm not that but starting a restaurant isn't that. Creating a different structure of a company to be able to create different value than anybody can see today, and building to there is that. So I've been better at it. I've been I've been able to see around corner, made tons of mistakes, but I've always been able to see what people can't see, what they would do under new circumstances, right? And try to build towards that would be my superpower.
Skating to where the puck is going.
Yeah, that would be my superpower. My tethered liability to that superpower is, or has been, less so now, but has been, is especially early on, is misunderstanding how fast people would change. Right. How
Thinking
long
it'll happen faster than it will.
I would be in front of it by too soon.
Yeah.
And understanding the timing and how people's just minds change and what that looks like, and how much value you have to deliver before their minds change. And really starting to, so tons of lessons and hard learned lessons along that path. But again, what is the thing that I would just ask you, if anybody's listening, what is the thing that you're naturally really good at? What your friends just naturally you're so good at? That's probably an area which would align well with your superpower.
Right.
And then you'll need people around you who can keep you honest.
Yes.
With where you're not, where your tethered liability is.
Yes. Yeah. One of the ways I've heard it put, which is something you've said in so many different ways throughout this conversation, is that we outsource our sanity to those people closest to us, right?
Yep.
That, well, we're all on a path, and we're all going to deviate from that path from time to time, and we're not always aware of it. So we do need trusted people close to us that will call us out, right? And that's very important if you're going to get to where you want to go. So reflecting on some of the things you had just shared, when I look at them in my own life, I too have always been a hyper curious person. I grew up poor, basically, by American standards, which is, global standards is a whole different story, but by American standards, I grew up poor. And I think that I was fortunate, though, to have, a lot of complications in my family history, but I did have a lot of loving family. And I had people in my life that put me on the right track, right? They really encouraged me to pursue education, to pursue sport. And I think these things, one, the education helps, not just education in school, but like reading books in particular that like really allows the curiosity to run wild, and you can kind of go whatever direction you want. And then sport, I think just for a young boy, it's just very important, right? You just learn goal setting and training and all the things that come with that. So that put me on like kind of a good path in life, that I felt good about myself. I think, maybe there's some deeper psychological things here, but I really pushed myself hard in a lot of different directions. Maybe it was to escape a lifestyle that I didn't want to live in, right? I didn't want to be poor. I wanted to grow up and be successful. I wanted to be, good at sport. I wanted to look good. I wanted to feel good, all these things. So I really like pushed myself to be competent in a lot of domains. And, I appreciate that about myself, but then the tethered liability, as you would describe it, is that at times in my life, I've become overconfident. And it's a weird thing, because as a young man, I was like, there was a time when I was a chubby kid, I wasn't that good at sport. And my main competency was like my sense of humor and being a smartass, But then as I became more physically fit and active, I started to feel better about myself and develop some confidence. But then that could be extended into overconfidence at times. And then I had failures as a result of that, getting out over my skis and then taking a tumble. But as I was telling you offline, it's like, I hope at this point as you were describing about yourself, right? How you've got to have the failures to gather the information, to pick yourself back up, put yourself back together, and learn from. I hope by this point, I've done this enough times that I've internalized that self-awareness to try and take humility very seriously, especially in a world that's changing faster and faster and faster. It's like your ability to project and know the future is declining as change is accelerating. The infamous words of Socrates, the only thing I know is I know nothing at all, which is why he said he was, the oracle at Delphi said he was the wisest man in Athens. And when asked why she said that, he said, it's because I know that I know nothing. As a young man, I thought those words were kind of nonsense. And now I think they're some of the most meaningful words there are. So, I don't know. I don't really have quite, it's just like, I hear a lot of echoes and how you've described your journey. I can detect some of those themes in my own journey. And, as I said to you offline, like I aspire to be more like you, like someone that has developed that depth of self-awareness where you can even catch yourself in your own rationalization, modifying a question. So I don't like, it seems like the pain and the experience is the only way for people to do this? Are there easier ways?
I think a lot of times the pain keeps you locked in, and you think it's somebody else. I think it's the acceptance. I think it's the and I know we'll talk a little bit more about this, but what are first principles? What are the things that are first principles, and then what are the things that you can anchor off of the first principles? And why I use and I don't know this for sure, but I believe that a first principle is that we are all in service of love and belonging, and we don't see. And if we are all in service of love and belonging, and you can see everybody acts like you in their own way, trying to achieve it, and they too push away the thing that they want most, and they don't see it. So if they do that, then you probably do too, and then when you really get there, you realize it's not about you at all. That love is everywhere. You can see it everywhere. You can see it in everyone, because you could unlock it in you. You saw that the path you were on that was not achieving kind of what you were trying to get. And as you unlock that, you can see it in everyone else. And so for me in that, then you can just allow that. You don't have to, it's not judging, or it's not bad, good. It's just, when I say that we're in service of love and belonging, you could take that in a way that, okay, is that a bad thing or a good thing? It's neither, and it's both, right? It can be. Yeah. It's how you interpret it.
Right. Yeah, you're coming to terms with what is, right? Almost without pre-interpretation in a way.
And then if that is, and at least from what I've seen, it is, and if that is, how is that? How did I fall into a trap that I thought was the truth and path and everything else, and that would cloud my reality? And could there be a better path?
What's the role? Because I've felt in my own life that gratitude has been extremely important. Just it feels like the more I've been able to come to a place where I'm grateful for what has happened. Obviously, this is very easy to do with the good things in your life, right? That's the easy part of gratitude. But to find a way to get to gratitude quickly when things aren't going your way has seemed to be very powerful, and not just in like an attitude sense, like, oh, I just feel better about the bad things happening to me, but it actually changes my orientation where I'm more apt to be able to find the opportunities or the ways to resolve the bad thing. Like you're just more in touch with the bad things in life, if that makes sense. It's like you're kind of looking like, what can I learn from this, right? I'm so grateful for this happening. This sucks, but I'm embracing the suck and I'm trying to learn from it. How has gratitude played a role in your journey? I think
it's very connected to love. Right? Okay. It's like it would be on the same spectrum, right? And when you look through a lens of gratitude, all the things you have things would expand. All the things you are, all the things you have, all the relationships, that would naturally expand. You would see more opportunities, unless versus fighting that all the time. All the things I don't have, all the things that would expand.
Is there a trick you use to like get out of the woe is me state of mind and get into a grateful state of mind?
I don't know if I've ever been in a woe is me state of mind.
Okay, well that's a gift.
Yeah, I actually honestly don't think I've ever been in that state of mind.
Wow. Even when you went through your personal catastrophes and stuff.
Even in those.
Wow.
Even in those. In those catastrophes, and remember, everybody lives with those catastrophes.
Sure.
My brother's golf tournament that I mentioned before. It's 23 years later. Our family didn't put it on. Friends put it on. 250 people come every year. It's sold out in minutes.
Wow.
And you want love and just beautiful people. And now remember, all of these people have had their own personal tragedies throughout but what I think what we still come together and celebrate is how not just my brother, but now how much those connections mean to each other, right? And how much they're all a part of us, right? So I still consider anybody who's touched me has changed me, so they are a part of me, and so I still consider that and so I think from a gratitude, I've never lived in a woe is me. Certainly hardships, certainly change that have been from left field. Your life changes in an instant, and you wish you wish that didn't happen. But certainly not as woe is me. Why does everything happen to me?
Is there can you, I don't know, offer any type of, is this something that you just have a natural predisposition for? Because I think a lot of people struggle with that. Like when the negative thing does hit them out of left field, that people get into a rut or a bad place, or, the why is this happening to me? And it's happened to me plenty of times, but, the faster, the better I'm able to make that transition from happening to me to happening for me, the better my life has been. Again, back to the gratitude thing, like trying to find gratitude even in the bad things in life. Like, is this something that just comes natural to you, or is there some trick that you're using to avoid that?
It's an interesting question, because I think it probably comes natural to me more so. And I think some people would see it as you're always an optimist, like you see the best in things. And that is very much true. I think some people don't realize how much to be there that I spend time to why it would look like that. And why, if I spent all my time in the other side, it would look like that. Right. So I spend a lot, even if you think about on Bitcoin, kind of the risks and the centralizations, the stuff that we talk about, that a lot of people don't even talk about. They're kind of up in order levels of knowledge, thinking everything's fine and just acting kind of, and for me to be in this spot, I have to make a decision, and I have to understand all of the things that are going to change, all the chaos that's coming, all the, my wife says all that. When you know all of this, and you know how people are going to act and everything, and she says, how do you stay there? Right. And all the time. And I said, we teach our kids to fire escape when they were young. What we don't expect to fire, right? But we want to know what to do in that eventuality. And I want to know all of these different paths and what does this look like. I really want to know, because I'm curious about what that looks like in each of us as this changes. But it doesn't make me want to live where everyone else is living in that despair.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So it's something like, sort of rhymes with hope for the best, plan for the worst kind of thing, but you're trying to keep your attention on the best, on the optimism.
It's not even hope for the best.
Okay.
It's be the best,
create the best.
It's put my energy into the world that I want to imagine. And honestly, if it all ends tomorrow, like what a ride. Like, like what a crazy, like glorious ride with people that I've loved the entire time. That it's been unreal. So, create the world you want to see.
That's I've been beating this drum recently. The BTC, be the change. There's something there that, for me, like going through the layers of liberation with Bitcoin, right? Like you get financially liberated, then you become sort of cognitively liberated as it unplugs your worldview or unplugs you from the matrix, whatever metaphor you want to use here. You get all these levels of liberation. And then the question is like, okay, what do you do with all that? And I think it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, you should actually, you see something in the world you don't want to be, well, then go out and be the thing that you do want to be. Yeah. And if you do it well and you do it right, then other people will.
It'll be inspirational for other people. And they'll see the same path that you took, and maybe make the same choice.
Exactly. So then, in being the change, you're actually propagating and affecting the change.
Yeah, and that's why it would really matter if you were doing the things that were in congruence with with you, like with the things you say you are, things you say you want in the world. You would think, or I would think, that would need to be congruent. And so when it wasn't congruent, those things that I said this, but I did this, those were real, like, and if I could do that, and I thought, and I could tell myself, no, it's okay, right? Then how couldn't I see that in everybody else? That's why I just don't it's going to be time. It's going to be as people make this change over, as they understand the change is really in them.
Okay, man. The line between good and evil cuts down the heart of every man. It sounds like that's something you keep coming back to.
That's right? It's in all of us. That's exactly it. We tell ourselves a story.
Yeah.
And you can see it in my story. You can see it in everyone else's story.
Yeah.
And so yes, that is it's we're both sides. Where does on a thermometer, when is it hot and when is it cold? Right.
It's all comparative, right?
It's all comparative.
Yeah. Okay. Again, this is another weird thing. All right, so there's that. The line between good and evil cuts down the heart of every man. We all get to choose, right, which way we're going to go. We choose our degree of goodness or evilness in every action, basically, right? So there's this, again, heavy degree of subjectivity to that.
Even good and evil in itself.
Yes. Right? But then there's this other, again, it always comes back to betweenness for me, right? There's always the betweenness, because it's not just, it is purely subjective, but then there's also this objective, economic scarcity, incentives, all these things that people are subjected to. If you want to see the worst in people, well, then go look at a hyperinflation economy, right? Or a diseconomy, I guess. At that point, people are going crazy. You want to see the best in people, look at a very mature kind of capitalistic and or religious society. People tend to be trading and collaborating at scale, and there's reliable rule of law and all these things, nonviolent dispute resolution. So is it just that material incentives are extremely important in helping us come to the right decision? I mean, because there's an interplay between the two here. And do we just accept it at that?
I think so. I think there's at what level, what would you do? Like if you knew these things, at what level, if your family was being persecuted and something, would you do what you would now consider evil?
Right. Exactly.
So
this is almost like the 97%, 2.5%.
Yeah, exactly. So so all of these things are in relation to, I just think that construct is in your mind, good, evil, and you want to be good. You want to tell yourself and that's evil. And it creates more and more of this when you wouldn't do all the things that you say you would. And then there's a whole bunch of people that are stuck in the existing system trying to do good, and they actually believe that they're desperate, and they believe in other false prophets, preying on that, thinking that they're doing good, and they're making that whole system more unstable. So I just think that way, I just don't think it's a very good framework to be able to. What I use that incentives, the payoff matrices before. It's pretty obvious when somebody is unviable, and they're standing in they're standing in truth, and that's attractive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very attractive because it's reaching for our higher being.
Yes. Yes. And that's where I think, I said this to you offline, but I think people like you are in that category for a lot of people. Now, I'm not saying my judgment is correct on all this, but my perspective would be that a lot of Bitcoiners look up to you for that reason. Like, you would be in that category, right? Of a moral exemplar, let's say, in Bitcoin. I mentioned to you too, I think like a guy like Larry Lepard is in that category.
I love Larry.
And when it's one thing for someone who's just easily irritated about things to tell you, central banking and the US dollar are a scam. It's another thing entirely to hear a guy of your caliber say something like inflation is the greatest lie ever told, right? It carries more weight because you wouldn't say that lightly, right? You're not even, you're not the type of guy that goes around indicting people or institutions. Again, you focus on the positive. And I hope that's an exact quote, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it is.
What does that mean? I mean, when we say that, what do people need to understand when you say inflation is the greatest lie ever told?
Well, it's think of the amount of pain that has caused the world when the choices were you could live in a world of abundance where the free market turned scarcity into abundance for all society. And we chose an inflationary monetary system over and over and over again that has to end in tens of millions of deaths, constant suffering, untold suffering around the world. And I would say most people still believe that it's required. Why would... and this, probably many of your listeners know this, but if the natural state of the market is a free market is deflation, then the only place inflation comes from on a longer term is somebody's control.
Yeah. Of course.
And it results in all of the terrible atrocities, all of them. It results in every single thing that is bad in the world, everything.
Yeah.
And you could say this, if you know the natural state of the free market is deflation, you could say, I don't believe in free markets. And you could say, I believe somebody has to control those people. And you could, right? You could make a case for that being your good, but you cannot say you could that there's no way people can live free, right? And and there's no way that based on a system that they could elect governments that were in service of them. You could say you don't believe that would be true, and so instead, I'm going to create inflation to be able to cheat people, and I'm going to but it's binary. Yeah. Right. It's quite binary. Right. There is no, so you could have a belief system about inflation that it's required, and it is required from a debt-based system. But that's conflating it being required or not.
Yes, because the debt-based system is not required.
It's not required.
Yeah.
It's like if you asked a different question, if you asked what would lead to abundance for society,
yeah,
and service, hope, a few. By the way, the free market would work perfectly well. We'd find more things that would get stuck,
yeah,
and they would create value for a while, and other people would then they would go to free, and we would find more things that would be stuck. Free market works perfectly,
yeah.
And so it turns out that it is. I think it's the greatest lie ever told. That somehow someone needed to trust other people to be able to manipulate the free market, so that we had to trust those same people.
This, I think you're putting your finger on one of the most pernicious things about all of this fiat fake money bullshit, if I may be so frank. And it's hard. I don't know. It's a little bit meta, but I'll try to say it as clearly as I can so far. The fact that printing money and the central banking paradigm as a legal monopoly is used as institutionalized system of theft, right? So we violently and deceptively preserve I'm speaking from the perspective of central bank shareholders, their right to print money, and they suppress all competition, right? No one else is allowed to get into the currency counterfeiting game. Only the central bank is. That effectively allows it to generate perpetual profits, right? It's literally in the money printing business, right? There's that great clip of I think it's a New Zealand central banker. He says, central banking is a great business. We print money and people believe it. Like that's it in a nutshell. So you have this profit center that can generate profits ad infinitum, basically, as long as the currency doesn't hyperinflate, right? The purchasing power stolen through inflation, through currency counterfeiting, is then used, well, we already know, to wage endless wars, right?
To educate a whole bunch of economists.
That's where I'm going next. Yeah. The spinning of false narratives, not only fake news, not only propaganda, but an entire pseudoscientific paradigm called Keynesian economics.
Complete pseudoscience.
So the question I want to get at is, like, you're saying, and I hear you, we believe or bought into this system, but it wasn't just a harmless choice. We're like, well, do we want sound money or do we want this? We had this other system actively cultivating, educating, manipulating, deceiving, I don't know what term you want to use here, encouraging people to believe that you needed inflation and you needed money printing, you needed all these things. So the system that's used to steal from people then uses the stolen proceeds to fund the psychological manipulation of those victims to get them to buy into their victimization as if it were good for them.
Yeah.
It's a very pernicious problem.
Yeah. They can't, and that's why you heard me say over and over, a system problem can't be resolved from the system creating the problem, and so it has to be resolved from something else. Yeah. And so that system problem, which we are all a part of, and if you're spending more of your time in it, you're blaming other people, and you're a part of that system that's reinforcing and stealing more of your energy, and has to steal more and more and more of your energy in that control system. But just imagine in this, most people think economics is hard. It couldn't be more dead simple. We trade with people all over the world to gain more value. The output of that trade is deflation. As we create better and higher uses of technology, that would put us faster deflation.
Yes.
That's all of economics. I don't think you need any more economics.
The only thing I would add to that is that consent is the key to get value on both sides of a trade. But it needs to be consensual.
But again, but the point is, we choose. Yeah. Right. So that is consensual. The free market is the only thing that we've ever found that we'll trade with somebody we don't like because we gain more value.
Yes.
It has to be consensual. And the way I said, the natural state of the free market is that no, it doesn't, the free market is consensual.
You're right.
So
No, you're right. You're right. I guess the point I was trying to get at was the temptation to deviate from consent and engage in coercion.
But again, that goes back to the other system. Right? Again, you don't need to say that.
Yeah.
All of economics, I think, can be described in what I just described. So think about all of the people who are trapped in their framework and listening to economists spouse on about what's needed for the economy to work, and all of these math models that are all contingent on pressing a button, that it's so ludicrous.
Yeah.
And they're looking at the math saying that on the Rube Goldberg machine, and they can't understand the math. So they believe somebody else when it's the most simple concept in the world. But if you removed that concept, all those jobs of all those people telling you what the world should look like, they're gone too. Right? Those people would actually have to contribute to you.
Yeah. What a crazy idea. Getting people to contribute. Okay, I've probably kept you long enough, but I want to ask you just one last thing. And this is because, again, Bitcoin is a very deep idea, right? It's very, what is money, the nature of money. Like, these are things that people just haven't, well, again, it's been omitted from the traditional education path, probably for the same reason we just highlighted, right? That there's a pernicious problem as it relates to money printing and the manipulation of narrative, which also applies to education. So that's probably the same reason Austrian economics is not taught in school. That makes this a big idea, right? Or at least an idea that's outside of the purview of most people that have been educated in this paradigm. And we use these words a lot when we're describing Bitcoin. Truth has come up a lot, and also trust, right? Where we place our trust is the thing that becomes money, right? Like, what is the thing that we trust in to be money? Well, that sort of becomes money by intersubjective agreement. And I'm fascinated with this connection between these two words, because I just noticed at one point they're spelled pretty similarly, but what's the actual connection? And apparently they both come from the Proto-Indo-European root word or root term deru, which means to be firm, solid, or steadfast. And so, truth is that factual reality of the world that our subjective interpretation of can't change. And then trust is much more complicated. It's like there's obviously interpersonal trust, like to what degree do I think you'll do what you say you will do, right? Yeah. To what degree do you have integrity? But trust doesn't only have to be between people. It could also be like, well, do you trust the math? Do you trust the bridge architecture? Do you trust, whatever the thing may be? So what are your thoughts about that? Because we often describe Bitcoin as truth or it's trustworthy, but then it's also, been described as like trust minimized when you go to Nick Szabo's work and he's saying like, what's the thing people need to trust least? That's whatever asset lets us trust one another the least or the most effectively or the most cost effectively would be the thing that serves best as money. So if you'll just play with these two ideas, truth and trust, how are they connected?
Yeah. So, and I think this is when you just say them and you say Bitcoin is this, it's not deep enough for people to hold on to.
Right.
Right. So I want to know how it is that.
Yes.
Right. And so it is true that it's just a ledger with a perfectly observable truth that my node runs and it can see the entire history of every transaction and it audits every 10 minutes So I'm part of a network that I know when people say don't trust, verify. I'm part of a network that audits this 10 minutes and nobody can cheat. And so then I go even deeper. Well, if money's always been cheated over time, and that's bounded by energy. And so that as long as it stayed like that, that truth or that ledger of truth would reprice all of the broken money, because it would be the free market, and that would gain more trust over time. Right? And so I can trust, and that then going deeper on that. Okay, what could break that? What could break the decentralized nature of the consensus? That's why we talked about if it's not used as a currency, it will break for sure in time. It has to be used as a currency as well, and it will be used as a currency as this extends. There's going to be lots of fights along the way, but I need to know, at least for me, that I've done the work at every different, at least conceivable attack vector, knowing that our human nature wouldn't allow that it'll be tried to cheat it over and over and over again, and how much money in the money that currently people describe as money will be used, and incentives and misdirection and the long game to try to cheat this. I needed to know, can it withstand that? And not only can it withstand it, by actively participating in the network and building on top of it, and knowing that I actually help reinforce it. I actually help, so I expand that network, and then more people, as they move more time and energy into it, they do too. So for me, when I think about these things in first principles. I think, what's the first principle? Natural state of the free market. That's the first principle. Is deflation. It's the first principle. What could resolve the paradox that we've never, in 3,000 to 5,000 years, been able to resolve? Could this resolve that paradox and allow us to live in that world? And what will the attack vectors look like? Because there's going to be many. Yeah. What false idols on the way through? How many people in the call it 97.5%? Today they say that they're this, and tomorrow they're somebody else. And people would have to look at me the exact same way, right? If most of humans cheat in time, that don't trust, verify, slay your heroes, they should do the work, so that they're part of that network. And as they do the work, they'll probably add their voice to the network and spend more time in it.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Would it be fair to say that truth is that around which trust ultimately coalesces? Like I don't think so. I mean, obviously we can be deceived in the short run, but it seems like in the long run that, time reveals all things sort of thing.
Maybe in a long time period, but why I say these fractals are that somebody's for truth is as real to them if they haven't done the work here as mine is to me. It's just different. They fully believe it.
So it's not even a truth, really. It's just a perspective.
It's a perspective.
Yeah.
And they are not putting themselves in a box that they're doing bad in the world. Yeah. They do not know how they contribute to the system. They might think that there's somebody who can help them, or a different leader, or a different this, or their work is impacting these people positive, and that might be true within a constraints of a system that has to get worse and worse. Yeah. So I don't think there is that truth is just as real for other people as it is for me.
I see.
It's just different.
No guarantee then that we even arrive at truth, because that seems like it's maybe at odds with the inevitability of Bitcoin.
Well, when I think about that, it's just maybe I'm poking on that word because I don't think people live in a world where they think they're living in lies. Right. They think it's true.
Right. So people are mistaking their perspective for truth.
So I'm talking about first principles.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I'm making a different choice into something that is objectively true, or at least right now it is. It's decentralized and secure. And I'm doing my work to make sure that it stays decentralized and secure, because that would be a risk. Right. And if you saw Bitcoin from the standpoint that you thought it was just another cryptocurrency or a Ponzi scheme or something else, that would be true for you. Right?
Even though it's fundamentally
even though it's not far from being true.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. And I I do have a bone to pick on this because I don't like it when people say, you know, oh, this is my truth. This is my truth. It's like they do need to use the word perspective instead of truth, because truth, I love what Musashi said, right? The truth is what it is. You either bend to its will or you live a lie.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't have your own truth and there's other people's truth. It's like there is one truth.
Yeah.
It's like you're either conforming to it or you're not.
But let's use physics as an example, right? So it is true. Like when you look and measure the world through your objective measure of the world, that it matches perfectly. All the models match perfectly. Theory of relativity, right? And Einstein's physics. But it's also true at a different perspective layer at the micro.
That's right.
That looks totally wrong.
Yeah.
So which is it?
You're right. Back to the resolution.
Back to the resolution. Yeah. And I think what's happening is we are, if fundamentally the universe is quantum that builds into our physical reality, then our minds must be too. Right? And because they convert electrical signals to what we see, and those electrical signals must be quantum in very nature at the very micro that we must be as well, meaning that I don't know if I've ever said it to you, but the example I use often is we're having a conversation in a restaurant filled with 100 people, and somebody says Robert across the room, you'll hear them. And so our conversation, which could change your entire path, is one conversation. And that other conversation, you'll tune out from my conversation to listen to that, which could send you on an entirely different path. And so I believe that we are part of this, and we all see different pieces that are true for us.
Yes, that makes sense. Is Bitcoin the truest thing we've ever encountered?
Well, I think it resets I think it's being open, decentralized, secure, protocol bounded by energy. Those 5 connected pieces. So it puts a physical limit on what we can do. We can change it. Yeah. So we could vote against our best interests. We could consensus. A whole bunch of things could happen. But as of right now, you have something that we said in the last podcast. It puts the best of us into a network for the best for us. That's what but the social layer of Bitcoin, those nodes, that's what Bitcoin is. It's us.
Yeah.
And so I think it's the best of us. And that could be described by if you were in Bitcoin trying to get rich and yell at people on the other side getting poor, that wouldn't look like the best of us. Right?
Bitcoin Twitter.
So it's hard to say. That's actually why I just say it's not one or the other, but it imposes a discipline that forces the free market for the first time in human history, that we'd have a global free market. And that's a big deal.
Yeah. That's a beautiful place to bring it to a close, I think.
Awesome.
Jeff, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming out here. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being such an inspiration to so many people. Where can people find you on the internet?
I'm only on Nostr now these days. Okay. So there, or if they want to, or jeffbooth.ca is my website.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.